Hey guys, tonight you find yourself standing barefoot on cold stone in a medieval queen's chamber where damp straw lies beneath faded rushes, smoke gathers lazily among soot-black rafters, and a distant bell trembles through the river mist beyond the castle walls. Mud dries in pale flakes on your boots near the door. Torchlight shivers across iron keys, oak chests, and the silver breath of horses waiting in the winter yard below. The room smells of beeswax, wet wool, old wood, and the faint sourness of last night's fire. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. You probably would not last a week out here, especially once you discover that warmth is borrowed, privacy is imaginary, and breakfast may involve something that has been boiled long enough to lose both its color and its confidence. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while the embers settle, leave a comment telling everyone where you are listening from and what time it is there. It is always pleasant to imagine these old castle bells drifting into bedrooms, kitchens, and corners all around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not the queen, which at this hour feels like a small mercy. You are one of the many quiet figures already awake around her, standing near the carved bed where heavy curtains hang from a wooden frame and trap what little warmth the night has spared. The curtains are thick wool lined with faded silk embroidered with vines, lions, and small crowned birds whose stitching has begun to loosen. They make the bed look like a private room inside the larger chamber, though everyone knows the privacy is mostly decorative. A queen's curtains may close, but they do not truly shut the world away. Beyond them, she is breathing softly. You can hear it because the chamber has gone still between bells. The watch has changed in the corridor. A guard coughs behind the oak door and quickly tries to disguise it by shifting his boot. Somewhere in the wall, a mouse scratches with the confidence of a creature that pays no market tolls and fears no steward. Near the hearth, a girl of perhaps 14 kneels to coax life from the ashes. She works with a small iron poker, a twist of dry moss, and 2 careful breaths. Sparks brighten, then disappear, then brighten again. The queen is not alone, even in sleep. 2 ladies have rested on narrow pallets near the bed, wrapped in wool blankets and fur-lined cloaks. One has slept badly and still wears the pinched expression of someone who has spent the night listening for every movement behind the curtains. Another older attendant sits in a chair with a cushion tied to its seat. Her head has drooped toward her chest, but her hands remain folded around a ring of keys. Those keys open chests of linen, caskets of jewels, cupboards of medicines, and perhaps one small box, whose contents no one discusses plainly. No one can quite agree whether it holds private letters, a saint's tooth, or merely dried lavender against moths. In a royal household, the dullest box often gathers the richest rumour. On a side table rests a beeswax candle burned halfway down. Its wick has bent into a black hook. This is the same candle that watched the Queen's ladies undress her the night before, loosen the cords of her gown, remove the pins from her veil, unfasten the girdle at her waist, and inspect the sheets before she entered the bed. It has burned through whispered prayers, the last cup of watered wine, the closing of shutters, and the final checking of the door bolts. Now it waits to see the whole process begin in reverse. The first monastery bell before dawn has already sounded from the abbey across the river. The second comes more faintly, softened by mist and stone. In the Queen's household, bells divide darkness into duties. They tell chaplains when to pray bakers, when to tend ovens, grooms when to feed horses, and servants when to begin carrying hot water through passages that are never quite warm. Time does not belong to clocks here. It belongs to bells, candles, stomachs, and the slow paling of the sky. The older attendant wakes without surprise. Her eyes open, and at once she checks the bed curtains, the fire, the keys, and the door. Only then does she glance at you. She makes a small motion with 2 fingers, meaning that the water should be nearer the hearth. You lift the jug. It is glazed earthenware, heavy and cold enough to sting your palms. The girl at the fire places a small metal pot over the coals so that at least some water may be warmed. No one expects luxury to arrive quickly. A soft movement comes from behind the curtains. Every person in the chamber notices. The kneeling girl pauses with the poker in her hand. The older woman straightens. One of the ladies on the pallet opens her eyes. The guard outside stops shifting his boots. The Queen has not spoken, and yet the room changes around her. This is one of the strangest things about royal life. Power may sleep, but everyone nearby remains awake to its breathing. She does not simply pull the curtain aside. There is a sequence because nearly everything around a queen becomes a sequence. First she speaks a soft morning blessing, then she waits. Then she touches the curtain cord. Only after the Queen answers does she draw back a narrow fold. Cold air enters the bed space. The Queen blinks into the candlelight. You see only part of her. At first, a pale hand, resting on the blanket, a loose braid dark against a linen pillow, the edge of a white sleeping shift. She looks less like the image stamped on coins and more like any tired person dragged from warmth before sunrise. Her face is unpainted. Her eyes are heavy. A crease from the pillow marks one cheek. For a moment she is simply a woman who would prefer the bell to reconsider, but even that moment is observed. The First Lady bows her head. The second offers the fur-lined slippers. The older attendant asks about the Queen's sleep, her warmth, her breathing, and whether the chamber air troubled her chest. These are practical questions, but they are also records in human form. A queen's health matters to the court. If she sleeps poorly, someone may tell the physician. If she coughs, someone may tell the chaplain. If she looks pale, someone may tell a lord who writes to another lord, and by evening a foreign envoy may be wondering whether the kingdom is about to lose its queen. The curtain opens wider. One lady holds a cloak around the Queen's shoulders before she leaves the bed, preserving a little warmth and a little dignity. Another lifts the blanket edge so that her feet find the slippers. The Queen rises carefully. The mattress sighs behind her. She stands within arm's reach of 3 attendants, with you near the hearth and the guard just outside. A chaplain is already waiting in the adjoining room. Somewhere beyond him a page holds a list of mourning petitions. Privacy has ended before her feet touch the floor. The chamber floor is covered with rushes mixed with dried herbs. Sweet flag, mint, lavender, and meadowsweet are scattered among them when supplies allow. The practice gives the floor a pleasant scent at first, though after boots, dogs spilled ale, damp hems, and several winter weeks the effect becomes ambitious rather than successful. Fresh rushes are a mark of care. Old rushes are a record of everyone who has crossed the room. Her first task is prayer, but even prayer begins with attendance. A lady hands her a small wooden rosary. Another adjusts the cloak at her neck. The queen turns toward a wall niche where a painted image of the Virgin stands beside a tiny reliquary. The reliquary is said to contain a thread from a saint's veil. Even now it is hard to tell whether the thread is sacred cloth, ordinary linen, or the careful invention of an abbey that once needed roof repairs. No one in the chamber says this aloud. When she finishes, the older attendant asks whether the shutters may be opened. The queen nods. Two servants move to the narrow windows and lift the wooden bars. The shutters drag inward with a groan. Morning enters, as a grey sheet of cold. Beyond the glassless opening and stretched horn panels, the castle yard appears through mist. Stable boys lead horses toward water. A cart stands crooked near the gate with one wheel removed. It broke the previous evening in the mud and has become by dawn the concern of 6 men. 3 opinions and no visible progress. A brown dog circles it hopefully. The dog has been following the kitchen servants for days and seems to believe every royal difficulty will eventually produce bones. A maid approaches with the basin. She sets it behind the folding screen, though the queen does not step behind it alone. One lady accompanies her, another holds the towel, and the older attendant remains close enough to hear if anything is needed. You carry the warmed water and pour it into the basin. Steam rises only faintly. Medieval warmth is often more of a rumour than a condition. The queen washes her hands and face with a linen cloth. Full bathing is not unknown, despite what later tales may claim, but it requires labour, privacy, fuel tubs, and time. A quick morning wash is simpler. The water may be scented with rose petals, rosemary, or a little vinegar. Today it smells of rosemary and cold metal. The queen presses the cloth beneath her eyes and along her cheeks. One attendant watches for irritation in the skin. Another asks whether a tooth troubled her in the night. Toothache is treated with herbs, prayer, hot compresses, or charms depending on whom one trusts and how desperate the pain becomes. Some recommend sage, some recommend wine, some recommend placing a written holy phrase against the cheek. A travelling healer once suggested touching the aching tooth with the tooth of a dead man, though the queen's household wisely keeps that remedy outside the walls, along with several other ideas best left to enthusiastic strangers. Behind the screen, the maid offers a comb. The queen's braid is loosened and her hair falls over her shoulders. It must be combed, inspected, smoothed, and covered before she appears publicly. Even this is not private. Hair carries meaning. Loose hair may suggest youth, morning intimacy, or disorder. Covered hair signals dignity and rank. The queen's head will soon support linen silk pins, perhaps a circlet, and certainly the expectations of everyone who sees her. You stand near the screen with the empty jug. Through a gap you see the queen seated on the stool while 2 ladies work around her. One separates the hair into sections, another checks the ribbon. The queen's face is calm, but the stillness has the quality of practice. She has learned to be observed without appearing observed. She has learned to let hands arrange her sleeves, her hair, her jewels and her posture, while keeping part of herself somewhere no servant can reach. Perhaps this hidden place is the only privacy she owns. Outside the chamber, footsteps gather. A clerk arrives with tablets, a chaplain clears his throat. A messenger from the kitchens whispers with a page. The morning household forms beyond the door, like water collecting behind a gate. Soon they will enter in proper order, each according to rank and duty. But already the Queen's day belongs to them. The older attendant draws the bed curtains fully open. Another servant folds back the blankets. The sheets are checked, shaken and noted. The pillow is lifted. A small sprig of dried rue lies beneath it, placed there by one of the ladies to guard against bad dreams or harmful influence. No one admits to doing it. No one removes it immediately. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether queens believe such protections or merely permit them because frightened servants work more quietly when their charms are left undisturbed. The Queen sits behind the painted screen, surrounded by hands, cloth keys, prayers, questions, and careful glances. She has been awake only a little while, yet her sleep has been discussed, her face examined, her cough remembered, her water carried, her hair handled, her sheets inspected, and her silence interpreted. You begin to understand that a royal chamber is not a refuge from the court. It is where the court begins. The understanding settles quietly as the painted screen is shifted nearer the hearth and the Queen's clothing chests are opened one by one. Iron keys turn inside small locks, lids rise on stiff hinges, and folded layers of linen, wool, velvet, and fur appear in the grey morning light. Nothing is chosen casually. A queen does not merely dress against the cold. She is assembled before witnesses. You stand beside the cedar chest holding a folded undergown while the mistress of the wardrobe studies the weather beyond the open shutter. Frost clings to the courtyard stones. The mist over the river has not lifted, and the horses below breathe pale clouds into the air. A fur-lined mantle will be needed, though not yet. Too much fur beside the hearth may make the queen flushed, and a flushed queen can create unnecessary speculation among people who have no useful work of their own. The first garment is a fresh linen shift, soft by medieval standards, though still coarse enough to remind the skin that comfort remains a privilege with limits. Two ladies hold it open while the Queen steps from the night shift she has worn beneath the blankets. The painted screen conceals her from the doorway, but not from the women attending her. One loosens a tie at the shoulder, another checks the linen for stains, loose seams, or signs of insects. This inspection is not considered rude, it is considered duty. Clothing is expensive linen, especially so, and every item must be accounted for. Garments pass through the hands of spinners, weavers, bleachers, dyers, seamstresses, laundresses, wardrobe clerks, and attendants before they touch the Queen. Even the most private layer carries the labour and curiosity of half a household. The Queen raises her arms, and the new shift falls into place. Its sleeves reach her wrists. The neckline is tied with a narrow cord. Over it comes a fitted underdress of warm wool, dyed a deep red that appears almost brown in the uncertain light. Red is costly when made well, and its richness announces wealth before a jewel is added. No one can quite agree whether the dye arrived from a southern merchant or from a Flemish workshop, whose owner claims his secret mixture was revealed by St. Catherine in a dream. The wardrobe mistress believes the second story because the cloth cost enough to deserve a miracle. The underdress is drawn close around the queen's body and fastened along the side. Small cords pass through stitched eyelets. A young attendant tightens them carefully, pausing each time the queen breathes. The fit must be graceful but not uncomfortable, modest but not shapeless. Every fold carries meaning. Too loose may suggest carelessness, too tight may invite gossip. Courts can turn a crooked sleeve into evidence of moral decline before the dinner bell. You hand over the outer gown. It is heavier, lined at the bodice with long sleeves and embroidered borders. Tiny golden leaves run around the cuffs. The queen slips her arms inside and the cloth settles over her shoulders. 3 attendants immediately begin correcting it. One smooths the back, another pulls the hem straight. A third adjusts the neckline by the width of a finger. The queen remains still. She has learned that impatience only makes ceremonies longer. Near the hearth, the brown dog from the courtyard has somehow entered the chamber. It lies beside the broken cartwheel messenger's muddy boots and watches the dressing with solemn interest. Perhaps it understands hierarchy. Perhaps it merely knows that expensive sleeves sometimes brush against breakfast. The queen's girdle is brought from a smaller chest. It is made of woven silk with silver fittings, and from it will hang a small purse, a seal case, and a set of keys that are partly useful and partly symbolic. The keys suggest control over household stores and private chambers, though many of the doors they represent are opened by servants long before she reaches them. The girdle is fastened at her waist. A narrow chain follows, then a brooch, then rings. Each ring is passed to the senior lady, first inspected, and only then placed on the queen's fingers. One bears a sapphire believed to cool anger and protect chastity. Some swear that sapphires grow dull when worn by the dishonest. The stone remains bright this morning, which comforts everyone except, perhaps, the court treasurer. The queen sits while her hair is divided and braided. You watch the ladies work with polished combs, linen ribbons, and long pins kept in a carved bone case. The braids are coiled near the ears, then covered with a fine linen veil. Over this comes a decorated band that circles the head. The pins are dangerous little objects, though no one treats them lightly. A dropped pin may disappear among the rushes and later find a servant's knee during prayers. One maid whispers that an iron pin worn near the temple can protect against enchantment. Another believes only silver works. The older attendant believes both girls should spend less time discussing enchantment and more time counting pins. The veil is adjusted repeatedly. It must fall evenly. It must frame the queen's face without hiding it. A queen's face belongs to ceremony. People read health, favor, grief, fertility, anger, and political intention from the movement of her eyes or the angle of her mouth. She cannot scratch her cheek without someone wondering which noble family has offended her. A small circlet is brought forward last. It is not the great crown used for solemn occasions, but a lighter band of gold set with pearls. Even so, the atmosphere changes when it appears. The circlet is placed over the veil, and the queen's ordinary tiredness becomes less visible beneath the language of rank. You see the transformation occur without magic. A woman who rose from bed with cold feet now sits before you, as the kingdom expects to see her. Linen, conceals fatigue. Red wool suggests wealth. Gold suggests authority. Pearls suggest purity. Fur will suggest dignity. The veil suggests virtue. The rings suggest legitimacy. Every object speaks before she does. The wardrobe mistress steps back and studies the result. One sleeve is turned slightly, the girdle is straightened. A pearl near the temple is wiped with a corner of linen. The queen rises and the long gown settles around her shoes. The dog lifts its head. The chaplain beyond the door stops, murmuring. The page with the petitions shifts his weight. At last, the fur-lined cloak is placed over the queen's shoulders. Its weight is immediate. It warms her, but it also restricts her movement, as royal clothing often does. She cannot stride quickly. She cannot bend freely. She must move with the calm pace expected of someone who is watched from every corner. You carry the discarded linen toward the chest, while the senior lady opens the chamber door. Cold air enters first. Then the court begins to look in. And the queen's chamber seems to shrink around the number of eyes entering it. The chaplain comes first, carrying a small book bound in worn leather. Behind him waits the household physician with a narrow face, a fur collar, and the permanent expression of a man who expects illness to reveal itself if stared at long enough. A page follows with petitions tucked beneath one arm. Then comes the food taster, the steward, two ladies of rank, a clerk and a servant bearing a covered tray from the kitchens. The brown dog rises at once. It has ignored theology, medicine, and government, but breakfast commands its full attention. You follow the queen through a short passage into a smaller chamber where a table stands near the window. The room is called private, though this seems to mean only that fewer than 20 people can fit inside. Without touching elbows, rushes cover the floor. A tapestry of a hunting scene hangs against the cold wall, its embroidered deer looking remarkably calm about the approaching hounds. Beneath it, a brazier gives off more smoke than heat. The queen takes her place in a carved chair. No one else sits until permitted. A linen cloth is spread before her, and the steward inspects its folds as though an enemy might be hiding inside them. The servant removes the tray cover. Breakfast is simple by royal standards: coarse bread, soft cheese, smoked fish, a small bowl of warm pottage, and watered ale flavoured with herbs. There are also dried pears from the winter storehouse, wrinkled and dark, but sweet enough to remind everyone that summer once existed. Before the queen touches anything, the taster steps forward. He breaks a piece. From the bread, drinks from the cup, takes a spoonful of pottage and pulls a strip from the smoked fish. He chews slowly while the room watches him. This is partly ceremony and partly caution. Poison is feared in royal courts, though sickness from spoiled food, dirty water, bad storage, or sheer bad luck is far more common. Some swear that a silver spoon darkens when it touches poison. Others insist that powdered unicorn horn can protect a drink. The physician possesses a small piece of pale material, said to be exactly that, though it looks suspiciously like carved bone from a northern sea creature. No one can quite agree whether the object has ever saved a life, but it has certainly improved several invoices. The taster remains standing. Nothing happens. The steward relaxes by the smallest possible amount. The queen breaks the bread with her fingers. Its crust is firm and a few crumbs fall onto the cloth. At once one of the ladies notices. She says nothing, but you see her glance toward another attendant, who glances toward the clerk. A royal breakfast has barely begun, and already the crumbs have witnesses. The queen dips bread into the pottage. It is thick with oats, onions, and perhaps a little parsley. The kitchens have sent it warm, though the passage has cooled it. She eats slowly, partly because dignity requires it, and partly because the room is silent enough for everyone to hear the spoon touch the bowl. The physician watches her face. He asks whether she slept well. The same question was asked in the bedchamber, but repetition gives medical concern the appearance of thoroughness. The queen answers that she slept adequately. The physician asks whether her hands are cold. It is winter, the shutters do not seal, and everyone's hands are cold, but he takes this information seriously. He reaches for her wrist to measure the pulse. The queen extends her hand while still seated. Her breakfast waits. The physician closes his fingers around her wrist and looks thoughtfully into the middle distance as though consulting invisible authorities. Physicians often judge health through pulse, urine, complexion, appetite, sleep, and the balance of bodily humours. Today he appears most troubled by the queen's refusal to eat the smoked fish. The fish itself is not attractive. It has the colour of old rope and the texture of a boot tongue. The dog continues to regard it as a treasure beyond price. The physician asks whether the queen feels heaviness in the stomach. She says no. Whether the morning air pains her joints. She says no. Whether she has experienced unusual dreams. She pauses before answering. That pause travels around the room. Dreams may be treated as signs, especially when dreamed by kings and queens. A river in flood may suggest danger. A white bird may promise news. A broken crown may produce a week of anxious sermons. The queen says only that she dreamed of bells across water. The chaplain brightens. The physician frowns. The older lady near the hearth quietly crosses herself. Even now it is hard to tell whether anyone truly believes the dream matters or whether court life simply provides too little entertainment before sunrise. The queen resumes eating. She takes a dried pear and cuts it with a small knife. The page holding petitions shifts from one foot to the other. The movement is slight, but the steward notices and gives him a look sharp enough to straighten his spine. A clerk approaches with a wax tablet. He reads a short report from the kitchens. 2 barrels of salted herring have arrived. 1 sack of oats is damp. 3 hens are missing. The baker requests more firewood. The queen listens while chewing. Even food stores are political. A royal household consumes enormous quantities of grain, ale meat, fish, salt wax wood, and fodder. If supplies run low, servants complain. If expenses rise, treasurers complain. If bread becomes smaller, everyone notices. The queen may not grind the grain or stir the pots, but her household's abundance reflects her status. The steward asks whether the damaged oats should be sold, cheaply fed to animals, or discarded. The queen answers that they should be inspected before a decision is made. The clerk scratches the instruction into wax. You watch her reach again for the bread. She cannot simply eat. She must govern between mouthfuls. A widow from a nearby manor has been waiting since dawn with a petition. A messenger from the abbey requests an audience. A merchant disputes a market toll. One of the queen's ladies wishes to recommend a cousin for a vacant household post. None of them has entered yet, but their hopes already press against the door. The queen drinks from the cup. The taster watches, the physician watches, the chaplain watches, the steward watches. You watch because everyone else does. She sets the cup down. One lady whispers that the queen seems pale, another answers that the light is poor. The physician hears both and orders the brazier moved closer. Two servants lift it carefully, trailing smoke across the room. The queen says nothing. The dog uses the confusion to edge nearer the table. A strip of fish slips from the taster's plate. The dog catches it before it touches the rushes and retreats beneath the tapestry with the speed of a professional courtier seizing an unattended favour. For one brief moment, the queen smiles. The expression is small, but half the room sees it. By noon, someone may claim she laughed. By evening, someone may decide the laughter was directed at the physician. By tomorrow, a distant noble may hear that the queen has mocked the entire medical profession over a plate of fish. Such is breakfast in a royal household. Every appetite is noticed. Every refusal is interpreted. Every smile may be carried beyond the walls. The queen wipes her fingers on the linen cloth and rises before the bowl is empty. At once the attendants move, the steward signals, the clerk closes his tablet, the physician stores away his concern for later use. You glance back at the abandoned pottage, the crumbs, the half-eaten pear, and the cup still holding a little ale. Even these remains will tell servants how much she ate. The queen leaves the table, but her breakfast does not leave the court. The queen leaves the table, but her breakfast does not leave the court, and neither does anything else she says, touches, refuses, notices, or pretends not to notice. You follow her into the corridor beyond the chamber. It is narrow, dim, and colder than the rooms behind you. The walls are built of thick, grey stone, damp in the lower courses where winter air creeps upward from the courtyard. Torches burn in iron brackets, their flames bending whenever a door opens farther along the passage. Smoke gathers beneath the wooden ceiling and leaves black stains around the beams. The queen's gown brushes softly over the rushes. Her attendants move close behind. Ahead, two guards clear the way, though there is little to clear, except servants' pages, clerks, and one sleepy hound that has chosen the warmest patch of floor beside a tapestry. This corridor connects the Queen's apartments to the chapel, the great hall, several lesser chambers, and a staircase leading toward the covered gallery. It also connects nearly every rumour in the castle to someone willing to repeat it. Doors stand at irregular intervals. Some lead to storerooms. Some lead to sleeping chambers where 3 or 4 attendants share pallets. One opens onto a small writing room where an ink-stained scribe bends over parchment beside a narrow window. Another conceals a stair used by servants carrying wood-water linen and chamber pots. The castle has official passages and unofficial ones, and people who know both become valuable very quickly. You pass a young page holding a bundle of wax tablets. He bows low, but his eyes rise just enough to inspect the Queen's face. He is probably looking for signs of temper, illness, or favour. Pages are trained to carry messages, pour wine, tend clothing, and learn manners. They also learn who quarrels, who receives letters after dark, and which doors remain closed longer than expected. A lady behind you whispers that the Queen ate little. The words are barely louder than cloth against stone, yet a servant near the wall hears them. You know he hears because his hand pauses on the basket he carries. He does not turn. Good servants rarely turn when listening. The queen walks on. At the next corner, a guard stands beside an oak door bound with iron straps. A ring of keys hangs from his belt. He bows, then announces that a messenger from the southern road arrived before dawn. The messenger claims urgency, which is what all messengers claim after riding through rain. The queen asks where he waits. The guard says the lower hall. That answer passes immediately into the ears of two pages, a clerk, a maid carrying folded towels, and the suspicious monk who has appeared near the chapel door with his hood drawn unusually low. He seems to be studying the wall painting of St. Michael, though he has been studying it for several mornings, and must by now know every flake of blue paint. Personally, no one can quite agree whether the monk serves the abbot, the bishop, or merely his own appetite for other people's business. The queen lowers her voice and tells the senior lady that the messenger should be given food before he is questioned. Even lowered her voice travels. Stone corridors are unhelpful companions to secrecy. Words strike the walls, soften, and return in fragments. A name spoken near one doorway may arrive at another without its sentence, which is often how the most durable rumours begin. You turn into a gallery overlooking the inner ward. Wooden shutters stand open between pillars, and cold air pushes through the space. Below, servants cross the muddy yard with baskets, firewood sacks of grain, and steaming pots. The broken cart remains near the gate. Its wheel now lies flat beside it, while four men debate the axle. The brown dog sits nearby, hoping the argument eventually becomes edible. The queen pauses at the gallery rail. At once the household pauses with her. She looks down toward the stables. Perhaps she is only watching the horses. Perhaps she is giving herself one quiet breath before the day closes around her. Yet even stillness invites interpretation. The clerk may think she is worried about travel. The guard may think she expects news. One lady may decide the queen dislikes the state of the yard. By midday, the stable master may receive an order to spread fresh gravel without knowing why. A door opens behind you, and two noblemen emerge from a side chamber. They bow deeply. One has been arguing about a disputed boundary near a mill stream. The other claims the stream changed course after a flood and therefore changed the boundary. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the water truly moved or whether one lord quietly moved the marker stones during the night. The queen greets them without stopping. They wait until she has passed, then begin whispering. Their voices fade, but not before you hear the words "southern messenger" and "poor appetite." The news has travelled the length of one corridor. Farther on, an elderly laundress kneels beside a chest of linens. She keeps her eyes down, though she knows more about the household than most counsellors. Linen carries secrets. Torn sleeves, stained cloths, damp sheets, perfumed handkerchiefs, and garments sent for washing at unusual hours all tell stories. A laundress need not attend a council meeting to understand who is ill, who has travelled, who has quarrelled, or who expects company. The queen passes within 2 steps of her. The woman bows. The queen asks whether her granddaughter's fever has broken. The laundress looks surprised, then grateful. She says the child slept better after being given willow bark tea and a charm tied with red thread. The physician recommends the bark. The laundress credits the thread. Both remedies have wisely avoided arguing in front of the patient. This small kindness is overheard too. By supper, the queen may be praised for remembering a servant's family, or someone may claim she favours the laundress. At court, even compassion can be weighed for political meaning. You continue down the passage toward the chapel. Bells sound beyond the walls, slow and heavy in the morning mist. The suspicious monk turns and disappears through a side door just before you reach him. A lady remarks that he walks quickly for a man devoted to contemplation. The older attendant answers that contemplation improves when one fears being questioned. The queen almost smiles again, but this time she does not allow the expression to reach her mouth. Near the chapel entrance, the senior guard opens the door. Warm candlelight spreads across the corridor. The smell of beeswax, incense, wet wool, and old stone meets you. Before entering, the queen speaks quietly to her closest lady. She says the southern messenger must not be discussed until his letter is read. The lady bows. A page hears. A guard hears. You hear. From behind the half-open door of the writing room, a quill stops scratching. The queen steps into the chapel carrying a secret already surrounded by witnesses. The queen steps into the chapel carrying a secret already surrounded by witnesses, and you follow beneath the low stone arch where the air changes from corridor cold to incense-thick stillness. The chapel is not large, but every inch of it seems occupied by meaning. Beeswax candles burn before painted saints. Their flames lean and straighten in the draughts that slip through narrow windows. A silver lamp hangs from a chain above the altar. Its oil gives off a faint, bitter smell beneath the sweeter smoke of frankincense. Along the walls, old frescoes show martyrs' angels, kings and devils, all watching with the same wide medieval eyes. The queen does not choose where to stand. Her place has already been prepared. A cushioned kneeler waits near the front, slightly raised close enough to the altar to display honor, but not so close as to challenge the priest's sacred space. Her senior ladies take positions behind her according to rank. Lesser attendants remain farther back. Guards stand near the door. Clerks gather beside a pillar. The household physician keeps close enough to observe without appearing to do so, which is a skill he practices with the solemnity of a monk illuminating scripture. You take your place near the side wall beside the young page carrying the petitions. His breath is still uneven from hurrying through the corridor. He tries not to look toward the queen, but he watches her reflection in the polished brass of a candle stand. Even prayer has seating arrangements. A visiting countess is placed 2 steps behind the queen's cousin, and 1 step ahead of the wife of the chamberlain. The arrangement has required more thought than repairing the broken cartwheel. If one lady is placed too near the front, another may consider it an insult. If one is placed too far back, her husband may discover a sudden political objection to the king's taxes. Souls may be equal before God, but court officials prefer them carefully ordered while inside the chapel. The chaplain opens his book. The pages are thick parchment marked with red initials and narrow lines of black script. A silk ribbon hangs from the binding. His fingers are stained with ink near the nails, though another scribe copied the text. He begins the morning office in a voice softened by years of chanting. The queen kneels. Everyone kneels. You lower yourself onto the cold floor where the rushes are thinner than in the chamber and offer little comfort to your knees. A servant beside you has tucked a small piece of folded wool beneath her gown. This is technically improper and practically wise. Medieval devotion is greatly improved by hidden padding. The chant rises and falls. Latin words move through the chapel understood fully by some, partly by others, and not at all by the brown dog, which has once again managed to enter and now curls beside the rear door. It rests its muzzle on its paws with an expression of respectable piety. The guard allows it to remain, perhaps because removing it would create more disturbance than tolerating it. The Queen crosses herself at the proper moments. Her movements are measured. She bows when the chaplain bows. She rises when the prayer requires standing. She kneels again when the prayer requires kneeling. Her devotion may be sincere, but it is also visible, and visibility turns sincerity into performance. A queen who prays too briefly may be thought careless. A queen who prays too long may be thought afraid. A queen who weeps may inspire sympathy, suspicion, or 3 competing prophecies before dinner. Today she keeps her expression calm. On the altar rests a small reliquary shaped like a church. It is made of gilt copper with coloured glass, set where jewels might have been. Inside lies a fragment said to come from the finger bone of St. Agnes. The abbey presented it several years ago after a difficult winter, and the royal household made a generous gift of grain soon afterward. Some swear that the relic once cured a knight's fever when placed beside his bed. Others say the knight recovered after the physician stopped bleeding him. No one can quite agree which event deserves the greater reverence. The chaplain lifts the reliquary for a blessing. The Queen bows her head. Behind her, one lady bows more deeply than the rest. Her brother hopes to receive an appointment at a nearby manor, and devotion becomes especially intense when land is involved. You hear the soft movement of fabric, the creak of leather shoes, the occasional cough, quickly buried in a sleeve. Incense drifts toward the ceiling and gathers under the beams. Outside, monastery bells answer the castle chapel, their sound crossing the river through the mist. The bells do not strike together. One arrives, then another, then a third, creating the impression that the morning itself is slowly breathing. The southern messenger waits somewhere below. The thought seems to move through the room even though no one speaks of him. The Queen's closest lady keeps her eyes on the altar. The senior guard looks straight ahead. The page beside you shifts the petitions under his arm. Everyone has heard enough to know that something has arrived and too little to know what it means. This is fertile ground for rumour. The chaplain begins a prayer for the kingdom's peace, the safety of travellers, the health of the royal household, and the wisdom of rulers. At the words concerning travellers, 2 ladies glance almost imperceptibly toward each other. At the words concerning health, the physician glances toward the Queen. At the words concerning wisdom, the steward closes his eyes with unusual firmness, perhaps praying for someone else to receive it. The Queen remains still. A priest approaches with holy water and an aspergillum made of bound bristles. He sprinkles the altar, the clergy, and then the royal party. Cold drops strike the Queen's veil and darken the linen in tiny spots. One drop lands on your cheek, another lands on the page's nose. He does not wipe it away. Holy water is believed to protect against evil influences, sickness, storms, and troublesome spirits. Some households keep small flasks of it near beds and doors. A kitchen maid Once sprinkled it over a butter churn that refused to produce properly. The butter improved the next day, though, so did the weather. The service continues. A list of saints is recited. The Queen answers softly. Her voice does not carry far, yet those nearest listen carefully. The chaplain includes the name of a local saint whose shrine lies along a muddy pilgrim road north of the castle. Pilgrims wear small lead badges from that shrine, shaped like a hand holding a candle. One hangs from the satchel of a guard near the door. He touches it whenever the prayer reaches the saint's name. The Queen finally rises for the closing blessing. Everyone rises after her. The chaplain makes the sign of the cross, and the room releases its held breath. Knees straighten, fabric rustles. The brown dog stands, stretches, and yawns so widely that the young page nearly smiles. But the Queen cannot leave immediately. The visiting countess steps forward to request prayers for her husband's fever. A knight asks permission to place a silver coin near the relic before travelling. The laundress from the corridor waits at the rear with a candle for her granddaughter. A clerk brings a list of names to be remembered at Mass. Devotion folds itself around petitions, family hopes, household anxieties, and quiet bargains with heaven. The Queen speaks kindly to the Countess. She touches the laundress's candle. She gives the knight permission. Every gesture is observed. When she turns toward the chapel door, the suspicious monk is standing there again, his hood now lowered. His face is mild and unreadable. He bows with perfect humility. The Queen pauses only long enough to ask whether the southern messenger has eaten. The monk answers that he has. No one has told the Queen that the monk knows this. The silence following his reply is very small, but you feel it. Then the Queen walks past him into the corridor, while behind you the candles continue to burn, before saints who, unlike the living court, are mercifully silent. The walk back to her apartments is shorter than before, though it feels more crowded. Word has spread that she will receive petitions after prayer, and people gather wherever the passage widens. A widow in a dark wool veil stands beside a clerk. Two merchants wait near the stair with damp caps in their hands. A minor knight leans on a cane carved with a dog's head. Farther back, a woman from the kitchens holds a bundle wrapped in linen and tries to look invisible, which is difficult when everyone around her is trying to be noticed. The Queen passes them without stopping. This is not refusal, it is order. A royal household survives on order, or at least on the appearance of it. Petitioners must be admitted according to rank, urgency, connection, and the steward's private estimate of how troublesome they may become if ignored. The important wait in warm rooms, the ordinary wait in corridors, the unlucky wait in rain. You enter the Queen's outer chamber, where servants have already transformed the space since breakfast. The table has been cleared. Fresh rushes are scattered near the chair of state. Two beeswax candles stand in tall holders, despite the morning light, because ceremony looks better by flame. A tapestry showing Queen Esther before a king hangs behind the chair, a quiet reminder that royal women are expected to approach power gracefully, even when power is seated in their own rooms. The Queen removes her fur-lined cloak, but not the circlet. One lady smooths the gown at her shoulders, another checks the veil. The wardrobe mistress picks a pale thread from the sleeve with the concentration of a surgeon. The chair is placed on a low wooden platform. The queen sits. At once the chamber becomes a court. Her ladies arrange themselves along the wall. The steward stands near the door with a narrow staff of office. The clerk sits at a small desk with parchment wax tablets, a knife for trimming quills, and a sand shaker for drying ink. 2 guards remain beside the entrance. The physician lingers near the hearth, pretending to study the smoke. You take your place beside an oak chest holding extra cushions, sealing wax, and a folded wool blanket for anyone important enough to be cold publicly. The first petitioner enters. She is the widow you saw in the corridor, a woman perhaps 50 years old, though hard winters and worry have made age difficult to judge. Her veil is damp from mist. Mud marks the hem of her gown. She kneels before the platform and keeps her eyes lowered. The steward announces her name and manner. Her husband died before harvest. His brother now claims the land, though she says the marriage agreement grants her use of the eastern fields and the mill income for life. The case belongs partly to a manor court and partly to royal favour, which is why she has travelled 2 days through rain to kneel in this chamber. The queen asks whether she has the agreement. The widow produces a folded document from beneath her cloak. The parchment is creased and stained at the edges. She holds it as carefully as a relic. The clerk takes it, but does not yet open it. That will come later. For now the queen asks about the harvest, the number of tenants, and whether the mill still turns. The widow answers in a voice that grows steadier with each question. One lady watches her clothes, another watches the queen. The steward watches everyone. When the widow begins to cry, an attendant offers a linen cloth. Tears are not unusual in petition chambers. They may be sincere, strategic, or both. Some swear that a petitioner who weeps before speaking loses advantage, while one who weeps only after presenting evidence gains sympathy. No one can quite agree who invented this rule, though it sounds suspiciously like the work of a clerk. The queen promises the agreement will be reviewed. It is not victory, but it is not dismissal. The widow bows until her forehead nearly touches the rushes and is led away. The merchants enter next. They smell of wet wool, horse sweat, and the sharp spices packed in their saddlebags. One represents a guild from the walled town. The other has come from across the sea with dyed cloth, pepper, alum, and several stories about pirates that improve each time he tells them. Their dispute concerns market tolls. The town officers charge them twice at the eastern gate, once for the carts and once for the goods. The merchants insist this violates an old privilege. The toll collector insists the privilege applies only on saints' days. The saint in question has been dead for 6 centuries and remains somehow the busiest person in the argument. The queen listens while the steward frowns. A merchant unfolds a sample of blue cloth. It is rich, smooth, and bright enough to draw every eye in the room. The queen touches it lightly between 2 fingers. The wardrobe mistress steps closer without appearing to move. The merchant says the colour comes from the finest woad. His rival coughs. The first merchant corrects himself and says it may contain a little imported indigo. The rival coughs again. The queen asks the price. Both merchants suddenly become less certain. The chamber warms with quiet amusement, though no one laughs openly. Bargaining before a queen is delicate work. Charge too much and you seem greedy. Charge too little and the cloth appears inferior. Medieval commerce, like courtship, depends heavily on pretending not to want what everyone knows you want. The Queen orders the toll records examined and permits the cloth to be shown to the wardrobe household. The merchants bow satisfied enough to leave without causing a scene. Then comes the knight with the carved cane. His left leg troubles him after an old riding accident. He asks for his son to be considered for service as a page. The boy stands behind him, thin, pale, and trying very hard not to sneeze. The Queen asks the boy whether he can read. He says a little. Whether he can ride. He says yes. Whether he can keep silent. The boy pauses too long. The Queen's mouth softens at the corner. She tells the steward to place him with the lesser pages for a trial month. The father bows with visible relief. The boy bows too late, then too deeply, and nearly strikes his forehead against the cane. Two ladies whisper behind their sleeves. The chamber continues filling and emptying. A miller requests relief after flood damage. A noblewoman asks support for a convent where her sister is abbess. A kitchen servant presents the linen bundle which contains a loaf baked in the shape of a crown for a local feast. The loaf is slightly crooked. The Queen praises it anyway. A physician from the town offers a remedy of honey, fennel, and crushed pearls for winter coughs. The royal physician looks offended by the pearls and interested in the honey. It is hard to tell whether the remedy heals anything, but it would certainly make illness expensive. Each visitor bows. Each visitor speaks. Each visitor leaves behind a request, a rumour, an impression, or a debt. The Queen's chamber is called her private apartment, yet the door never truly closes. Nobles enter, merchants enter, widows enter, clerks enter, servants enter, guards remain, ladies listen. The Queen sits beneath the image of another queen and receives the kingdom in pieces. At last, the steward signals that only one petitioner remains. The southern messenger steps through the door. His cloak is stained with mud to the knees. His face is grey from cold and lost sleep. He kneels and holds out a seal packet. The Queen does not break the seal, not here. She takes the packet, weighs it once in her hand, and passes it to the senior lady. The chamber watches the small movement. No one speaks. Yet you can almost hear curiosity gathering in the room like rain against shutters. The Queen keeps her hand still while the senior lady receives the packet. Its outer wrapping is darkened by mud and damp, but the wax seal remains unbroken. A mounted bird is pressed into the red wax, surrounded by letters too small to read from where you stand. The messenger lowers his head and waits. The Queen asks who placed the packet in his hands. He names a noble household far to the south. She asks whether anyone else has opened it. He says no. The clerk near the writing desk looks at the seal. The steward looks at the messenger. The suspicious monk, who has somehow found a place beside the door without anyone inviting him, looks at everyone. The Queen orders the messenger given food, dry clothing, and the place near the kitchen fire. He bows, rises stiffly, and is led away. Mud remains where his knees touched the rushes. A servant immediately covers the marks with fresh herbs, as though rosemary can conceal political uncertainty. The door closes. It does not create privacy. The guards remain. The ladies remain. The clerk remains. The steward remains. The physician remains near the hearth, though the letter cannot possibly concern medicine. He appears to believe that illness may be hiding inside any folded object. The senior lady sets the packet on the writing table. The Queen crosses the room and sits beside it. You follow with the small box of seals, quills, thread, and wax used for correspondence. The brown dog settles near the chair, having decided that letters are less rewarding than smoked fish, but more comfortable than the courtyard. The Queen could open the packet herself, but the clerk must first examine the seal. He bends close without touching it. He studies the crest, the colour of the wax, the way the cord passes beneath the fold, and a tiny crack along the lower edge. A forged seal can carry false orders. A broken one can reveal that someone has read the message during its journey. A seal may be heated, lifted, and pressed back into place by a patient hand. Some swear that placing a human hair across the fold will reveal tampering. Others use fine silk thread wax dust or secret marks hidden beneath the flap. No one can quite agree which method works best, though all agree afterward that the obvious signs were obvious. The clerk says the crack likely comes from cold weather. The steward asks whether he is certain. The clerk answers that certainty is rarely included in his wages. The Queen almost smiles, then tells him to proceed. A small knife slides beneath the cord. The wax seal is preserved rather than crushed, because seals may later serve as proof. The wrapping opens. Inside lies a narrower, folded sheet of parchment closed with a second seal. A letter inside a letter. The court's curiosity grows more miserable. The Queen touches the inner seal. This one is smaller and bears no visible crest, only a simple cross cut into blue wax. She recognizes it. You see that recognition in the brief pause of her fingers, and so does everyone standing close enough to breathe. She does not announce the sender. The clerk opens the second seal. The parchment is unfolded on the table. The writing is cramped and dark, with several lines added at the bottom in a different hand. The Queen can read, but royal letters are rarely read by one person alone. A clerk may read them aloud. A secretary may explain unfamiliar names. A chaplain may translate Latin. A trusted lady may remember what must not be written down. The Queen reads silently first. The room waits. Her eyes move across the lines. She does not change expression, but the senior lady watches her face more carefully than the parchment. The steward studies the floor. The suspicious monk studies a candle flame with extraordinary devotion. At last, the Queen asks the clerk to read the first page aloud. His voice is low and even. The letter speaks of flooded roads, unrest among tenants, a dispute between two noble families, and a gathering of armed men near a border manor. Nothing is stated plainly. Medieval letters often approach danger sideways. A writer does not say rebellion when disagreement will do. He does not say betrayal when uncertain loyalty sounds less likely to end with confiscated lands. The second paragraph asks for the Queen's advice. The third asks for money. Most letters become more honest near the request. The clerk continues. A widow seeks protection. A local sheriff has disappeared. Grain stores are low. A bridge has been damaged by flood water. A priest claims to have dreamed of a black sun above the southern hills. The physician crosses himself. The steward sighs. The Queen asks whether the priest is known. The suspicious monk answers before anyone else. He says the man has a reputation for visions during fasting, although those visions often improve after supper. The Queen looks toward him. The monk lowers his eyes. The remaining lines are written in cipher. The clerk stops. A cipher is not always elaborate. Sometimes letters are exchanged for numbers. Sometimes names are replaced by saints, animals, or places from Scripture. A fox may mean a lord, a tower may mean a castle, a candle may mean a meeting. This method offers secrecy only as long as the key remains secret, which at court is an optimistic arrangement. The senior lady retrieves a small wax tablet from the locked chest. It contains the matching symbols. She places it beside the parchment and covers both with her sleeve so that only the queen and clerk can see. You turn slightly away. The guards pretend not to listen. The physician stops pretending altogether. The clerk translates in a whisper. The queen asks for one line repeated, then another. The senior lady presses her lips together. No one tells the room what the hidden passage says. That silence says enough. The queen orders a reply prepared. The clerk sharpens a quill with his knife, dips it into ink, and waits. She dictates carefully, choosing each phrase, while every listener remembers a different part. She expresses concern for the flooded lands. She advises caution. She promises no soldiers. She requests further information. She names no suspected lord. She refers to the border manor only as the place previously discussed. The clerk writes. The ink glistens before sand is shaken over it. A second letter is dictated for a bishop. A third goes to a royal officer. Each passes through hands before leaving the chamber. The clerk writes them. The queen reviews them. The senior lady folds them. A servant heats the wax. The seal keeper brings the matrix. A messenger will carry them. Guards may inspect his papers at gates. Innkeepers will notice his route. Stable boys will see which horse he changes. Even the most secret royal words travel through a crowd. When the first reply is sealed, the queen presses her ring into the warm wax. She lifts it, leaving her mark behind. The letter is now private. Nearly 12 people have already witnessed its birth. Nearly 12 people have already witnessed its birth, and by the time the sealed letter leaves the chamber, the castle bells are sounding toward midday. The sound rolls through stone passages over the inner yard and across the river, where mist still lingers above the reeds. Servants begin moving more quickly. Kitchen boys carry covered dishes through the corridors. Pages hurry toward the great hall. The steward receives 3 contradictory reports about the seating order and treats each as a personal attack upon civilization. The queen rises from the writing table. At once her ladies gather around her again. The veil is checked. The circlet is straightened. A small dark spot of ink has appeared near the cuff of her sleeve, perhaps from the clerk's table. The wardrobe mistress notices it with the horror of someone discovering a siege tower outside the walls. She rubs the mark with a damp linen cloth until it fades enough to survive public inspection. You follow the queen toward the hall. The corridor grows warmer as you approach the kitchens, though the warmth comes with smoke steam and the smell of onions frying in animal fat. Through an open service door, you glimpse cooks standing before great hearths. Iron pots hang from chains. A boy turns a spit while wiping his eyes against the smoke. Another carries a basket of coarse bread. A woman sprinkles herbs into pottage and warns a younger servant not to let the sauce burn. Near the wall, a pie crust has collapsed in the middle. A cook presses it flat and announces that it was meant to look that way. Medieval kitchens are full of people who understand that confidence is an ingredient. The queen does not enter, though everything prepared within those walls will soon appear before her. Her meal may include roasted capon, smoked fish, thick pottage cheese, dried fruit, spiced wine trenchers of stale bread, and a dish of stewed onions with saffron. The ingredients come from farms, rivers, market stalls, royal forests, distant ports, and winter storehouses guarded by keys large enough to suggest that turnips are jewels. When the doors to the great hall open, heat candlelight and voices meet you together. The hall is long and high, its roof supported by dark wooden beams lost in smoke. Tapestries cover the walls, helping slightly against the cold and greatly against the sight of damp stone. At the far end, the high table stands on a raised dais beneath a canopy. Lesser tables run down the hall in rows. Rushes cover the floor, mixed with rosemary and sweet flag to soften the odours of wet boots, spilled ale, dogs' old smoke, and several hundred people pretending not to notice one another. The Queen enters. Conversation lowers. Not fully. A royal arrival does not silence a great hall so much as bend its noise. You walk behind her toward the dais. Nobles bow, clerks rise, knights touch hands to their chests, servants flatten themselves near walls. The brown dog appears beneath a table, having discovered a route to the hall more efficiently than half the household. The seating arrangement has been prepared according to rank, blood, favour, marriage, age, office, and recent insult. The Queen sits near the centre of the high table. A visiting countess sits close enough to feel honoured. The chamberlain's wife sits far enough away to feel remembered. A bishop occupies one side. A foreign envoy occupies the other. No one can quite agree whether the envoy understands the local language. This allows everyone to speak carefully around him while assuming he understands nothing, which is usually how foreign envoys learn everything. You take your place behind the Queen's chair with the other attendants. The steward raises his staff. A chaplain offers grace. Heads bow. Hands fold. The hall settles into a rough stillness broken only by the hiss of torches and the quiet struggle of one knight attempting to keep his sleeve out of a bowl of sauce. The first course arrives. Servants carry platters above shoulder height through the crowded hall. Trenchers are placed before the guests. These are thick slices of stale bread used as plates. They absorb juices and grease during the meal and may later be given to servants' dogs or the poor. A trencher is useful, edible, and requires no washing, making it perhaps the most successful invention in the room. Before the Queen eats, the taster performs his duty again. He samples the pottage, he bites the capon, he drinks from the Queen's cup. The foreign envoy watches with interest. The bishop watches with resignation. The dog watches with religious devotion. The Queen begins with the bread dipped into sauce. Her movements remain measured. She cannot lean too far over the table. She cannot tear meat too eagerly. She cannot drink deeply after the cold corridor, though she is surely thirsty. Appetite is observed as closely here as it was at breakfast, only now there are far more eyes. A nobleman near the end of the high table tells a story about a boar hunt. He claims the animal was larger than a cart and clever enough to circle behind the hunters. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether the boar existed at all, but the nobleman has already survived it 4 times this winter. The Queen listens politely. The envoy asks about the southern roads. The question is casual. The table grows attentive. The Queen says the roads are wet from flood water and difficult for merchants. This is true. It is also incomplete. The envoy nods, and one of his secretaries makes a note on a wax tablet beneath the table. The bishop changes the subject to a monastery roof in need of repair. A countess asks whether the queen has seen the new blue cloth brought by the merchants. The chamberlain's wife remarks that imported dyes often fade. The wardrobe mistress standing behind you stiffens as though personally accused. A servant fills the queen's cup with spiced wine. She takes one sip. The physician notices. The bishop notices. The envoy notices. The chamberlain's wife notices that the countess notices. At court, observation is a communal hobby. The second course brings smoked fish, small meat pies, boiled greens, and a dish decorated with coloured sugar. The sugar has been shaped into a tiny castle. One tower leans slightly. The cook has concealed the weakness beneath a flag. Some swear that sugar strengthens the body and warms the stomach. Others prescribe it in medicines with cinnamon cloves or crushed herbs. The physician considers it useful in moderation. The steward considers anything imported in small chests useful only when someone else pays. The queen cuts a small piece from the sugar castle. The foreign envoy smiles. The chamberlain's wife interprets the smile. The countess interprets the interpretation. You begin to understand why royal meals last so long. Food is only one part of them. The rest is rank diplomacy, rumour, and the careful study of who receives the better slice of pie. Below the dais, musicians begin playing softly. A harp threads through the hall noise, a flute follows, servants move between benches, refilling cups and replacing dishes. Dogs wait beneath tables for falling scraps. A jester stands near a pillar, but remains quiet for now, wisely judging that the southern roads are not a subject improved by bells on a cap. The queen speaks with the bishop, then the envoy, then the countess. She smiles at the proper moments. She eats enough to appear healthy, but not enough to seem indulgent. She asks after a knight's injured son. She praises the capon. She avoids the smoked fish. The dog receives it later from a sympathetic page. Near the end of the meal, the queen reaches for her cup and pauses when a messenger enters the hall. He does not approach the dais, but whispers to the steward. The steward's face remains calm. His hand tightens around the staff. The queen sees it. So does everyone else. She sets down the cup without drinking. That small, unfinished movement passes along the high table like a cold draught. The envoy stops smiling. The bishop lowers his eyes. The countess folds her hands. The chamberlain's wife looks delighted to have survived long enough to witness something interesting. The steward approaches and bends near the queen's shoulder. His whisper is too soft for you to hear, but not too soft for the room to notice. The queen nods once, then she returns to the meal. She asks the musicians to continue. She breaks another piece of bread. She speaks to the bishop about the monastery roof. The hall slowly begins breathing again. Yet every guest now knows that a message has arrived. Every guest knows the queen has chosen not to leave. Every guest will decide what that choice means before sunset. The feast continues beneath the smoky rafters, and the queen remains seated at its centre, surrounded by food, music, candlelight, and the patient hunger of rumour. When the final platters are removed, the king enters through the side door of the dais. He has spent the morning with councillors in a chamber overlooking the outer ward. Mud darkens the edge of one boot, suggesting that he has crossed the courtyard rather than used the covered gallery. A page follows with rolled maps. 2 knights remain near the doorway, and a grey-haired lord walks close enough to speak into the king's ear. Everyone in the hall notices when the queen looks toward him. Everyone notices how long she looks. Everyone notices whether he returns the glance. The king does. He inclines his head. The queen answers with a small smile, neither too warm nor too distant. It is a perfectly measured exchange between husband and wife, which means it will be interpreted in at least 12 different ways before the tables are cleared. The visiting countess sees affection. The chamberlain's wife sees strain. The foreign envoy sees an alliance functioning as intended. The bishop sees 2 Christian spouses presenting harmony before their household. The brown dog sees that the king's page is carrying a meat pie. A place is made for the king beside the queen. Servants move cups, knives, and folded cloths. The steward directs the changes with clipped gestures as though rearranging one royal chair threatens the foundation of the realm. The king sits. For a moment, husband and wife speak quietly. You stand behind the queen and hear only fragments: the southern roads, the damaged bridge, the missing sheriff, a name connected to the sealed letter. Their words are practical. Royal marriages may contain tenderness, resentment, loyalty, habit, friendship, duty, or all of these at once, but they are rarely allowed to contain only themselves. A marriage between rulers joins lands, families, claims, debts, armies, and expectations. Its success is measured not merely by whether 2 people can share a table without irritation, but by whether treaties hold heirs, survive, and ambitious relatives remain just satisfied enough not to cause trouble. The king asks whether the queen has eaten. She says she has. He looks toward the untouched smoked fish. The queen looks toward the dog beneath the table. The king understands. His mouth moves slightly at the corner, and the queen's smile becomes real for the briefest instant. The chamberlain's wife leans towards the countess and whispers behind her hand. A private joke has lasted less than a heartbeat and already belongs to the court. No one can quite agree whether the king and queen married willingly. Some say they first met only days before the ceremony. Others insist they exchanged letters through trusted clerics for months. One elderly courtier claims the king admired her painted portrait, though the portrait made her eyes larger, her fingers longer, and her complexion so pale she resembled a saint who had recently seen a ghost. Painted likenesses help arrange noble marriages, but they are not always reliable. Artists know that honesty is admirable and continued employment is better. The king reaches for his cup. The queen asks whether the council meeting went well. He says it went as council meetings usually do. Every man entered certain and left offended. The joke is quiet enough to remain within the dais, though the bishop hears it and hides a smile behind his cup. The queen asks about the messenger's report. The king does not answer immediately. That pause is noticed. Their marriage is expected to be intimate enough for trust, but never so private that others stop wondering what they share. If the king tells her too much, councillors may complain that she governs him. If he tells her too little, her relatives may fear she lacks influence. If she advises him openly, she risks appearing ambitious. If she remains silent, people may say the marriage has cooled. There is no gesture so small that the court cannot place a political weight upon it. The king says they will discuss the report later. The queen nods. The chamberlain's wife notices the nod. The foreign envoy notices the chamberlain's wife. You suspect the envoy understands the local language perfectly. The musicians begin a slower tune. Servants carry away the sugar castle, now missing one tower and most of its wall. The leaning tower survives untouched, which seems unfair but historically believable. The queen and king rise together. The hall rises after them. They walk from the dais side by side, neither too close nor too far apart. The king's sleeve brushes the queen's fur-lined cloak at the doorway. A young page looks down at once, perhaps embarrassed by this tiny sign of closeness. An older lady watches with satisfaction, as though the kingdom has been secured by two pieces of wool touching. You follow them into a withdrawing chamber where the crowd becomes smaller but does not disappear. The bishop enters. So do the grey-haired lord, the queen's senior lady. Two guards, a secretary and the suspicious monk, who now carries a book to suggest that he has arrived for scholarly reasons. The king stands near the hearth while a servant removes his damp outer cloak. The queen sits beside a narrow table. Between them lies the sealed southern letter. They discuss the missing sheriff. The grey-haired lord advises sending soldiers. The bishop advises sending a priest. The suspicious monk suggests sending someone who can tell the difference. The queen recommends first sending a trusted officer with authority to inspect the grain store's bridge and manor accounts. The king listens. The lord frowns. The secretary writes. This is how a royal marriage sometimes works, not through whispered endearments beneath moonlight, but through mud, reports, disputed tolls, missing officials, and decisions made while 6 other people stand nearby, pretending not to judge the tone of every sentence. The king agrees with the queen's proposal. The grey-haired lord bows. The queen does not look triumphant. Triumph would be remembered. Instead, she asks whether the officer can leave before dawn. The king says yes. Their eyes meet briefly. The decision has been made together, but the record may later say it was his alone. Some queens influence policy through official councils. Others use household appointments, family connections, gifts, letters, prayers, and private conversation. Even now, it is hard to tell whether a queen's influence is exaggerated by enemies or minimized by chroniclers who prefer power to wear a beard. The meeting ends. The king leaves for the outer ward to inspect the guard. Before departing, he touches 2 fingers lightly to the queen's hand. The gesture is affectionate. It is also public. The bishop sees reassurance. The lord sees unity. The secretary sees something worth omitting from the written record. When the door closes, the queen remains seated for a moment, her hand resting where his touched it. Then her senior lady steps forward to ask whether the evening chambers should be prepared for the king's visit. The room becomes very quiet. The queen answers softly. Yet even that answer passes immediately into the machinery of servants' fires, linens, guards' keys, candles, and doors. In a royal marriage, even the approach of night requires witnesses. The answer given by the queen's senior lady travels outward through the household in quiet stages. A page carries it to the chamberlain. The chamberlain sends word to the king's servants. A maid is dispatched to inspect the sheets. 2 boys bring fresh firewood. A groom is told that the king's horse will not be needed after supper. By the time the winter light fades from the narrow windows, half the castle knows where the king is expected to sleep. No proclamation is made. None is necessary. You return with the Queen to the bedchamber as servants begin preparing it for the evening. The heavy curtains around the bed are drawn back and examined. Linen sheets are unfolded from a locked chest and held near the hearth to remove their chill. A thick wool blanket is shaken, sending faint dust into the candlelight. Fur covers are laid across the foot of the bed, their edges brushed smooth by careful hands. The mattress beneath them is stuffed with wool and feathers, though not evenly. One side has settled into a hollow. A servant kneels to beat it back into shape with a wooden paddle. The sound is soft and repetitive, like distant footsteps. The Queen watches from beside the fire while her circlet is removed. Her veil follows. Pins are counted as they come free from her hair. The older attendant places each one in the carved bone case and checks the rushes for anything dropped. A missing pin may be inconvenient, a missing royal pin may become a charm, a keepsake evidence of theft, or the beginning of a story no one needs. The Queen's braids are loosened, her hair falls across the shoulders of her gown. For a moment she appears less ceremonial, though there are still 8 people in the room. The king's attendants arrive carrying a folded night robe, a silver cup, a prayer book, and a small warming pan with a long wooden handle. Hot coals are placed inside the pan, which is then passed between the sheets to warm the bed. The servant handling it moves slowly. A coal spilled into linen can turn royal comfort into a memorable evening. Some swear that adding dried lavender to the warming pan prevents nightmares. Others recommend rosemary against bad air, or rue against harmful spirits. Tonight, the older attendant drops a pinch of lavender onto the coals. The smoke smells sweet for several breaths before taking on the sharper scent of scorching leaves. The brown dog sneezes beneath the table. It has followed you through supper council prayer and now the preparation of the royal bed. No one admits to allowing it inside. The dog has apparently promoted itself. A priest enters to bless the chamber. He sprinkles holy water near the bedposts, the hearth, and the door. He speaks a short prayer for peaceful sleep, bodily health, lawful marriage, and protection from darkness. His eyes avoid the bed itself with studied politeness. Beside the pillow, one lady places a small reliquary containing what is said to be a fragment of St. Margaret's girdle. The saint is invoked by women in childbirth and by wives hoping for children. No one can quite agree whether the fragment is cloth leather or thread from a much newer garment, but its presence comforts the household. Comfort is valuable even when authenticity is uncertain. The Queen sits while her outer gown is removed, the sleeves are unlaced, the girdle is unfastened. Rings are returned to their box. Her fur-lined cloak is folded over a chair. Each garment passes through several hands before disappearing into a chest. She remains in her linen shift and a warm robe. The king arrives after the final evening bell. His entrance is quieter than his arrival in the great hall, though he is not alone. 2 guards accompany him to the door. His chamber servant carries a candle. A chaplain follows with the prayer book. The grey-haired lord does not enter, but he waits long enough in the corridor to confirm that the king does. The Queen rises. They greet each other with the restrained warmth expected before attendants. The king looks tired. A line of damp remains near the edge of his hair from the mist outside. The Queen asks whether the guard inspection went well. He answers that the guards were alert immediately after being told he was coming. The Queen smiles. The older attendant studies the blanket. The king's servant studies the fire. No one studies the royal couple, though everyone sees them. They kneel together for prayer near the bed. The chaplain reads from the small book. Candle flames move in the draughts. Beyond the shutters, wind passes along the castle wall with a low, hollow sound. When the prayer ends, the chaplain withdraws. The attendants do not. The king removes his outer garments with the help of his servant. His belt dagger, cloak, and boots are placed near a chest. The dagger remains within reach of the bed, though the room is guarded. Royal caution rarely sleeps, even when the king does. The queen steps behind the painted screen with two ladies. You hear linen shift cords loosen and the quiet murmur of instructions. She emerges in her sleeping shift, wrapped in a wool robe. The bed curtains remain open. This is the strangest part. The royal couple may enter the bed, but attendants must witness enough to confirm that they have retired together. In some courts, noble marriages are ceremonially placed in bed after weddings, surrounded by clergy family and laughing guests. Tonight is less public, though only by royal standards. The Queen climbs onto the mattress from one side. The King enters from the other. Servants draw the covers over them. One lady adjusts the Queen's pillow. The king's servant places the silver cup on a nearby stool. Another attendant checks that the chamber pot stands behind the screen. A guard confirms that the outer door is bolted. The older woman lowers the bed curtains, but not completely. A narrow opening remains. If the Queen calls, someone must hear. If the king becomes ill, someone must respond. If an argument begins, someone may later deny hearing it while remembering every word. The senior lady asks whether more wood should be added to the fire. The Queen says no. The king says yes. There is a pause. Then the Queen says that one log may be added. The servant places two. Royal compromise has practical limits. At last, most of the household withdraws to the outer chamber. Yet two ladies remain on pallets nearby. The king's servant sleeps beyond the door. Guards stand in the corridor. A page waits at the stair. The priest occupies a chamber close enough to be summoned. The physician has been told where he may be found. Behind the wool curtains, the king and queen speak softly. You cannot hear the words from your pallet near the hearth. Perhaps they discuss the southern letter. Perhaps they speak of the damaged bridge, the missing sheriff, or the officer leaving before dawn. Perhaps they speak of nothing political at all. Those who tell such tales never fully agree whether royal couples find real closeness behind guarded curtains, or merely another kind of duty. The half-burned beeswax candle trembles beside the bed. The dog circles twice on the rushes and settles near your feet. Outside, the watch calls the hour. Inside, the Queen lies beside her husband, surrounded by blankets. Servants' relics, guards' locked doors, and listening silence. The bed is the most private place in the castle. It is also one of the most carefully watched. The bed is the most private place in the castle. It is also one of the most carefully watched, and before many weeks have passed, the watching acquires a new purpose. At first, nothing is announced. The Queen rises as she always does. Her ladies open the curtains, warm water is carried in, her hair is combed, her linen is inspected. She attends chapel, receives petitions, eats beneath observing eyes, and walks through corridors where silence travels faster than speech. yet small changes begin to gather around her. She leaves half a bowl of pottage untouched. She asks for the shutters open despite the cold. The smell of smoked fish makes her turn her face away. At breakfast, she reaches for a dried pear and then sets it down without tasting it. The physician notices. The senior lady notices that the physician notices. The chamberlain's wife, though nowhere near the chamber, somehow notices by supper. A queen's body is never entirely her own. It belongs partly to dynasty inheritance, diplomacy, prayer rumour, and men who draw family trees on parchment, as though children appear because ink requires them. If her monthly courses do not come, attendants may know before she speaks of it. Linen is washed, counted, folded, and recorded. Ladies sleep near her bed. Maids carry water and empty basins. The most intimate rhythms of her body pass through the hands of the household. One morning the senior lady asks whether the queen wishes to speak privately. They move behind the painted screen. You remain near the hearth with the other attendants. The screen is thin wood covered with linen. It blocks sight better than sound. The senior lady lowers her voice. The queen answers more softly still. You cannot make out the words, but you hear the pauses between them. When they emerge, the older woman's expression has changed. It is not joy exactly. It is caution, wrapped around hope. By noon the physician is summoned. He does not examine the queen alone. 2 senior ladies remain. A maid holds the basin. The chaplain waits in the adjoining chamber. You stand near the chest of remedies where small jars contain honey, dried fennel rusage, mint-powdered coral, and several substances whose names sound more reassuring than their contents. The physician asks questions. Has the queen felt faint? Has she experienced unusual warmth? Has her appetite changed? Has she dreamed of water fruit, white birds, or gardens? Dreams again. A queen cannot even sleep without becoming evidence. The physician takes her pulse. He studies her complexion. He asks to inspect a flask of urine that a servant has carried through the corridor beneath a cloth. Urine examination is treated with great seriousness. Color clarity, sediment, and smell may be interpreted according to medical learning. Some physicians even taste it, though the royal physician appears to believe scholarship has reasonable limits. He turns the glass toward the window. The queen watches him. The ladies watch him. You watch everyone watching. He says the signs are encouraging, but uncertain. That word settles over the chamber. Uncertain. No one wishes to announce a pregnancy too early. Miscarriage is common, dangerous, and often hidden beneath careful language. Yet, waiting brings its own risks. If the court suspects before the household confirms, rumor may outrun control. The physician recommends rest, moderate food, warm wine, gentle walking, and avoidance of sudden fright. This last instruction is difficult to follow in a castle full of messengers, quarrels barking dogs falling firewood, and nobles who consider every tax dispute an emergency. He also recommends avoiding strong smells. The queen looks toward the smoked fish being carried past the open door. The servant changes direction immediately. Within days, her routine begins to alter. She still attends chapel, but a cushion is placed beneath her knees. She still receives petitioners, but sessions grow shorter. She no longer climbs the steepest tower stair. Her horse is chosen for calmness rather than speed. The fur-lined cloak becomes heavier, the rooms warmer, and the household quieter whenever she pauses. Quiet, however, does not mean private. The king is informed in the presence of a chaplain, the physician, the senior lady, and a secretary who records nothing but remembers everything. He takes the queen's hands and smiles. The gesture is tender, but it is also witnessed. The chapel bells sound later that day. No proclamation is made, yet servants begin placing extra candles before the shrine of Saint Margaret. The kitchen sends broth flavoured with parsley. The laundress receives instructions to prepare softer linen. The wardrobe mistress checks which gowns can be loosened at the sides. By evening, the market town below the castle has heard that the queen refused fish twice. This is considered practically official. Some swear that carrying a small piece of amber protects a pregnant woman from fever. Others recommend coral against evil influence, a wolf's tooth against pain, or a strip of parchment bearing sacred words tied near the waist. The chaplain approves of the parchment if the words are properly chosen. The physician approves of amber because it is less likely to cause harm than many remedies. The older attendant approves of anything that makes everyone stop arguing. A small charm is sewn into the queen's girdle. It contains a prayer, a thread said to have touched a saint's shrine, and a sprig of dried rue. No one can quite agree whether the queen requests it or merely allows it to spare her ladies from worry. Her meals become matters of debate. One physician recommends roast meat for strength. Another suggests lighter pottage. A noblewoman advises dates and almonds. A midwife from the town recommends ale warmed with herbs. The kitchen receives so many instructions that the chief cook finally prepares 3 dishes and claims each follows a different authority. The queen eats what she can. Every mouthful is observed. If she chooses bread, someone says the child will be calm. If she prefers apples, someone says it will be a girl. If she asks for salted food, someone predicts a boy. If she wants nothing at all, everyone becomes alarmed. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether medieval people truly trust these signs or simply cannot bear waiting without inventing answers. The queen's chamber changes around her. A stool appears near every window. A blanket waits beside each chair. The floor rushes are renewed more often to reduce unpleasant smells. Strong incense is used sparingly. The brown dog is briefly banned after it startles a maid beneath the bed. It returns before sunset. The queen's ladies begin sleeping even closer to the curtains. One listens for coughing, another keeps water ready. The older attendant checks the fire twice during the night. A physician may be called for a headache, a cramp, a poor appetite, or a troubling dream. The queen cannot wake without someone asking how she feels. She cannot grow tired without someone recording when. She cannot place a hand upon her stomach without the room becoming still. Weeks pass. Her gowns loosen. Her face changes slightly. The uncertainty remains, but hope becomes harder to hide. In chapel prayers for the royal household grow longer. At meals the queen's cup is watched more carefully. In corridors, nobles bow deeper. Foreign envoys write home. Distant relatives begin considering what the birth of an heir might mean for their own claims. The child is not yet born, already it belongs to politics. The queen stands one evening beside the narrow window, looking over the frosted yard. Below, the broken cart has finally been repaired. The brown dog runs after a stable boy carrying bones. Bells drift from the abbey across the river. For a moment, the queen rests both hands over the new curve beneath her gown. You see the movement. So does the senior lady. So does the physician near the hearth. So does the servant entering with candles. The queen turns away from the window, carrying within her the most private life in the kingdom, and knowing that nearly everyone is waiting for proof of it. The waiting stretches through winter. Snow gathers in the corners of the inner ward, melts into grey slush beneath cartwheels, and freezes again after sunset. The abbey bells cross the river each morning through mist. Fires consume wood faster than foresters can deliver it. The queen's chambers grow warmer, more crowded, and more carefully controlled. When the first pains begin, they arrive quietly. The queen is sitting near the hearth while one of her ladies reads from a book of saints' lives. A beeswax candle burns beside the page. The brown dog sleeps beneath the table, its paws twitching as though chasing something through a dream. The queen's hand tightens around the arm of her chair. The reader stops. For several breaths no one speaks. Then the pain fades. The senior lady approaches and asks whether the queen wishes to stand. The queen nods. Two attendants help her rise. She walks slowly across the rush-covered floor, pauses near the bed, and breathes until the room begins moving again around her. A second pain comes before the next bell. This one lasts longer. The midwife is summoned. She arrives from the lower chambers wearing a dark wool gown, a white linen veil, and a leather pouch filled with herbs. Cords, small knives, wax thread, and objects no physician would willingly admit he recognizes. She has delivered noblewomen, merchants, wives, servants, and more village children than she can count. Her hands are broad, clean, and warm. The royal physician follows close behind. He and the midwife greet each other with the stiff politeness of people who disagree on nearly everything except the importance of being present. The chamber doors close. The queen is not left alone. Her senior ladies remain. The midwife remains. Two experienced matrons are admitted. The physician waits nearby. A priest enters with holy water, a relic, and prayers for safe delivery. A clerk records the hour at which the pains are formally acknowledged. Beyond the door, guards take their places. The birth of an heir must be witnessed. Too much depends upon certainty. A royal child may inherit lands, titles, alliances, and claims stretching across borders. If doubt surrounds the birth, enemies may whisper that the infant was exchanged, smuggled into the room, or born to another woman. Such stories are unlikely, but courts have never required likelihood before feeding suspicion. The senior lady orders the chamber searched. Chests are opened, curtains are lifted. The space beneath the bed is checked, disturbing the brown dog, which emerges with the offended expression of a minor lord denied precedence. The adjoining rooms are inspected. Servants confirm that no infant is hidden there. The windows are secured. The doors are guarded. Everyone who enters is known. No one can quite agree whether such precautions truly silence rumour or simply provide rumour with better scenery. The birthing chamber is prepared according to custom. Shutters are closed against cold draughts. Tapestries are hung more thickly over the walls. Candles are lit before an image of the Virgin. The room becomes warm, dim and heavy, with wax smoke wool and the sharp scent of herbs. The bed is covered with older linens that can be stained without alarming the wardrobe mistress. Cushions are piled near the headboard. A low birthing stool is placed beside the hearth, then moved again, because the midwife dislikes the angle of the light. The queen walks while she still can. You stay near her with one of the senior ladies. She grips your forearm during each pain. Her fingers are stronger than you expect. Between pains, she breathes slowly and looks toward the half-burned candle beside the bed. The priest murmurs prayers. One matron warms cloths, another mixes wine with herbs. The physician recommends caution regarding the herbs. The midwife recommends that he stand somewhere less useful. The queen nearly laughs, but another pain bends her forward. Hours pass. Time is measured by bells beyond the walls, by candles shrinking in their holders, and by the growing weariness on every face. The first meal hour passes, then the next. Servants carry broth into the chamber, though the queen takes only a little. Water is warmed repeatedly. Fresh linen appears from locked chests. The witnesses do not leave. Some sit against the wall, others stand near the door. They speak softly when permitted. Their presence is intended to protect the legitimacy of the birth, but it also transforms labor into ceremony. The queen cannot cry out without being heard. She cannot grow afraid without it being seen. She cannot ask for silence without silence itself becoming notable. Some swear that opening every lock in a house helps ease childbirth. Others loosen knots, unbraid hair, and untie cords so that nothing remains symbolically closed. The senior lady orders the queen's girdle removed. Ribbons are untied. A maid opens the lids of 2 chests and unfastens the latch on the window shutter, though the shutter itself remains closed against the snow. The midwife hangs a small written charm near the bed. The priest examines it. It contains sacred words and no obvious nonsense, so he permits it. The physician pretends not to notice. The pains deepen. The queen kneels, stands, walks, rests, and rises again. Her ladies support her beneath the arms. The midwife speaks in a steady voice, never hurried, never loud. She tells the queen when to breathe, when to wait, when to conserve her strength. Outside, the king waits in an adjoining chamber. He is surrounded by councillors, clerks, guards, and a chaplain. He cannot enter, but he cannot escape the waiting either. Each sound through the door reaches him. Each silence becomes longer than it truly is. At one point, a lady leaves the chamber to report that the queen remains strong. The message travels through the castle. By the time it reaches the kitchens, the queen is said to be resting peacefully. By the time it reaches the gatehouse, she is said to have delivered already. By the time it reaches the town, twins have been invented. Inside, nothing is finished. Night settles beyond the shutters. Snow touches the outer walls. Watchfires burn along the battlements. The abbey bells mark another hour. The queen grips the edge of the birthing stool. The midwife kneels before her. The room tightens into one shared breath. Then the child arrives. For a moment there is only movement, cloth murmured instruction, and the queen's exhausted breathing. Then a cry rises. It is small, sharp, and unmistakably alive. Every witness hears it. The midwife lifts the infant just high enough for those nearest to see. The sex of the child is announced clearly. The matrons confirm it. The senior lady confirms it. The physician steps forward. The priest begins a prayer of thanksgiving. The child is not hidden, even for a moment. That is the point. A clerk records the hour. A messenger waits beyond the door. The king is told. Bells begin ringing before the infant has been fully wrapped. The midwife ties and cuts the cord, then places the child in warmed linen. The queen reaches out. Her arms tremble from exhaustion, but she gathers the bundle close. For one brief breath, the room softens. You see a mother looking down at a face only moments old. Yet around her stand witnesses, matrons, ladies, physician, priest, servants, and officials. Beyond the doors wait the king, the council, the household, the castle, and eventually the kingdom. The most intimate moment of her life has required an audience. The child sleeps against her. The witnesses begin carrying certainty outward. The witnesses begin carrying certainty outward, and with certainty comes celebration. Bells ring from the chapel tower. A trumpet sounds above the gate. Servants hurry through the corridors with smiles, messages, trays, fresh linen, warmed wine, and instructions that contradict one another before reaching the stairs. In the kitchens, extra bread is cut. In the great hall, candles are lit. In the town below, people gather in the market square before anyone can agree precisely what has happened. Inside the chamber, the queen is exhausted. The child rests beside her in a wooden cradle lined with wool. A nurse watches every movement beneath the blankets. The midwife remains near the bed. The physician checks the queen's pulse again, although it has been checked so often that her wrist seems to belong partly to medicine. The priest gives thanks. The senior lady records who witnessed the birth. A servant gathers stained cloths beneath the supervision of another servant, because even now nothing connected to the queen's body leaves the chamber unnoticed. You stand near the hearth with a basin of cooling water. The brown dog lies beneath your stool, quieter than usual, perhaps made solemn by the bells, or merely tired from being removed from beneath the bed twice in one day. The queen closes her eyes. At once the physician asks whether she feels faint. She opens them again. Rest is difficult when every sign of resting becomes a symptom. For the first days, the chamber remains sealed against cold air. Tapestries cover the walls, shutters stay closed. Fires burn constantly, filling the room with heat and smoke. According to custom, a woman after childbirth may remain in a sheltered lying-in chamber for weeks, protected from drafts, labor, public obligations, and the hazards of ordinary movement. The arrangement sounds peaceful. It is not private. Ladies remain at the bedside. Nurses feed and wrap the infant. Physicians visit. Priests pray. Noblewomen request permission to see the child. Messengers arrive with congratulations, gifts, relic charms, and advice no one has requested. One countess sends a silver spoon. Another sends a piece of red coral believed to protect infants from sickness and harmful influence. A distant abbess sends a strip of linen said to have touched the tomb of a saint. No one can quite agree whether the same strip has been sent to 6 other noble households, though holiness appears to travel efficiently. The queen grows feverish on the 3rd night. At first, the change is slight. Her cheeks brighten. She complains of thirst. Her hands remain cold beneath the wool blanket. The older attendant adds wood to the fire, but the physician says the room is already too warm. The midwife says warmth is necessary. A chaplain suggests another prayer. Within an hour, the chamber contains more opinions than fresh air. The physician takes the queen's pulse. He examines her tongue. He asks whether she feels pain. He studies a flask held toward candlelight. The midwife asks practical questions in a quieter voice and presses a hand against the queen's brow. Her expression changes, though only slightly. The nurse carries the infant into the adjoining chamber. The queen watches the cradle disappear through the door. She asks for the child to remain nearby. The physician says rest is essential. The queen repeats the request. The senior lady orders the cradle placed just beyond the painted screen, close enough for the queen to hear the infant breathing. Even weakness requires negotiation. A second physician arrives before dawn, summoned from the town. He wears a heavy cloak, smelling of wet horse and rosemary. He has grey eyebrows, a leather case of instruments, and the confidence of a man who has not yet heard the first physician's opinion. He recommends cooling drinks and a mild herbal preparation. The first physician recommends warmth and bloodletting. The midwife recommends that neither man remove blood from a woman who has recently lost enough of it. The discussion remains polite because the queen is listening. Some physicians believe illness comes from imbalance among the humours blood phlegm, yellow bile and black bile. Treatment may involve diet herbs, purging heat, cooling, or the careful use of leeches. Astrology may also guide the timing. A chart is produced to determine whether the moon favours intervention. The queen lies beneath 3 blankets while men examine the heavens to decide what to do about her fever. Even now it is hard to tell whether the delay protects her or merely gives everyone time to feel learned. A leech jar is brought from the medicine chest. The brown dog growls at it. This is the most sensible medical opinion offered all morning. The midwife persuades the physicians to wait. Instead, cloths soaked in cool water are placed on the queen's forehead. She is given diluted wine with honey and a little willow bark. The priest places the saint's linen near the pillow. A lady ties red thread around the bedpost against misfortune. The fever rises. Word spreads despite orders for silence. The king comes to the outer chamber. He is not admitted immediately. The physicians speak with him beside the door, while clerks, guards, and servants stand near enough to hear fragments. She is strong. The fever is concerning. The night will matter. Each sentence travels differently. By breakfast, the queen is recovering. By midday, she is dying. By evening, she has already died in one distant manner, recovered miraculously in another, and given birth to a second child in a third. Illness turns the court into a mill that grinds uncertainty into rumour. Inside the chamber, the queen drifts between waking and sleep. Whenever she opens her eyes, someone is there. A lady offers water. A physician counts her breaths. A priest asks whether she wishes to confess. The senior attendant changes the cloth on her forehead. The nurse reports that the infant has fed well. The queen cannot groan without someone leaning closer. She cannot whisper without the room becoming still. She cannot turn her face toward the wall without prompting concern that she has lost consciousness. You sit beside the half-burned candle through the darkest hour. The flame shortens. Snow taps softly against the shutters. The abbey bell marks time across the river, slower than the pulse beneath the physician's fingers. Near dawn the queen wakes and asks for the shutters opened. The physician objects to the cold. She asks again. One shutter is opened a hand's width. A narrow blade of winter air enters the room. It carries the smell of frost, wood smoke, horses, and the distant river. The queen breathes deeply. Her fever begins to ease later that morning. No one can say whether the willow bark helped, the cool cloths helped, the prayer helped, the fresh air helped, or time simply moved in her favour. Everyone quietly credits the remedy they recommended. The physician credits restraint. The midwife credits common sense. The chaplain credits Saint Margaret. The older attendant credits the Queen's stubbornness. Over the following days, strength returns slowly. She sits up with cushions behind her back. The cradle is brought beside the bed. The infant's tiny hand closes around one of her fingers. The moment is gentle. It is also observed by two ladies, the nurse, the physician, the priest, and you. The Queen smiles down at the child, pale and tired, but alive. Around her the court begins turning recovery into meaning. Some call it divine favour. Some call it proof of a strong constitution. Some call it a good omen for the dynasty. No one calls it private. Even sickness cannot give the Queen solitude. It only brings more people closer to the bed. It only brings more people closer to the bed, and when the Queen is finally strong enough to leave her chamber, she discovers that recovery has merely changed the shape of her audience. The first escape is into the enclosed garden. You walk behind her through a covered passage where damp air smells of wet wool, cold stone, and last night's smoke. Her steps are slow. One hand rests on the arm of the senior lady. The other gathers the edge of her fur-lined cloak above the muddy threshold. The physician follows at a respectful distance, which is to say close enough to comment on every breath. The garden lies within high walls on the southern side of the keep. In summer it holds roses, lavender, sage, lilies, and fruit trees trained along wooden frames. Now winter has stripped it nearly bare. Frost silvers the herb beds. A thin skin of ice covers the stone basin at the centre. Brown stalks bend beneath the cold. Still the air feels wider than the bedchamber. The Queen pauses beneath an arch of leafless vines and looks up. For the first time in many weeks there is no ceiling above her. Clouds drift low over the battlements. Crows circle the chapel tower. Beyond the walls, abbey bells move across the river, softened by distance. The sound is familiar. The same bell that has marked prayers, meals, fever birth, and sleepless dawns. Yet here it seems less like an order and more like part of the weather. The brown dog runs ahead along the frozen path, nose pressed to the ground. It has grown slightly rounder since discovering the high table and now moves with the confidence of a creature certain that royal ceremonies exist primarily to produce leftovers. A gardener waits beside the herb bed's cap in hand. He shows the Queen where the first snowdrops may appear when the ground softens. He points to rosemary protected beneath woven straw mats, and to rue that has survived near the warm wall. The Queen asks whether the old pear tree will bear fruit again. The gardener says it should, provided the frost does not split the bark. Then, after glancing at the physician, he adds that tying a strip of red wool around the trunk may protect it. Some swear that fruit trees hear kind words and reward patient gardeners. Others strike the branches with sticks at midwinter to frighten them into producing a better harvest. No one can quite agree whether the trees respond to encouragement threats or merely spring. The Queen smiles and asks that the tree be spared the beating. You continue along the path. Two ladies follow with cushions. A maid carries warmed wine. A guard waits at each gate. The suspicious monk appears near a covered bench holding a prayer book upside down. When he notices you looking, he turns it around without changing his expression. Even in the garden, solitude keeps its distance. Yet the Queen finds small pockets of freedom here. She can stop beside the frozen basin without explaining why. She can touch the rough bark of the pear tree. She can watch the dog dig furiously at the patch of earth until it uncovers nothing more exciting than a root. No envoy studies her appetite, no clerk records her words, at least none stands close enough to be obvious. Later, when the snow begins to melt and the roads become passable, a short pilgrimage is arranged to a shrine beyond the town. The Queen wishes to give thanks for surviving the birth and fever. The court approves, though gratitude requires nearly as much planning as war. Horses are selected. Guards inspect the road. Servants pack coarse bread cheese, smoked fish, blankets, candles, and warmed ale. A cart carries extra clothing and gifts for the shrine. Its repaired wheel creaks at every turn, reminding you of the broken axle that occupied the courtyard before the child was born. The Queen rides beneath a pale morning sky. Her horse is calm and broad-backed. A lady rides on either side. Guards lead and follow. The physician travels in a covered cart and complains about every rut while insisting the Queen should not feel them. The road passes through fields glazed with frost. Peasants stand beside hedges and bow as the procession moves by. Children wave from doorways. A mill wheel turns slowly in brown water. Smoke rises from thatched roofs carrying the smell of peat and damp wood. For the Queen, travel offers movement without privacy. At each village people gather. At each roadside cross the chaplain pauses. At each bridge guards search beneath the arches before allowing the royal party to cross. The Queen cannot disappear into the landscape, but the landscape at least changes around her. Near midday, the party rests beside a small shrine where a carved saint stands beneath a wooden roof. Pilgrim badges, ribbons, scraps of cloth, and old candles hang from nails around the image. Someone has left a wooden crutch in gratitude for a healing. Someone else has left a tiny wax model of a child. The Queen dismounts. You spread a blanket near a roadside fire. Servants pass bread and cheese. The Queen drinks warmed ale from a silver cup, while pilgrims watch from a careful distance. Their cloaks are patched. Mud clings to their boots. One wears a lead badge shaped like a scallop shell. Another carries a staff decorated with bells. A grey-haired woman approaches with a bundle of herbs and offers the Queen a sprig of vervain for protection on the road. The guard moves to stop her. The Queen raises a hand. The woman says vervain keeps away fever, bad dreams, and dishonest companions. The suspicious monk coughs behind you. The Queen accepts the sprig. Whether she believes in it is impossible to tell. Perhaps she simply understands that refusing a poor woman's gift would cause more pain than carrying a harmless herb. By evening, the procession reaches the shrine church. Torches burn beside the gate. Bells sound above the roof. Pilgrims kneel along the nave as the Queen enters beneath the canopy. The saint's relic waits behind silver and glass, attended by monks who describe its miracles with professional confidence. The Queen offers beeswax candles, coins, and a small embroidered cloth. She kneels. Her ladies kneel behind her. Guards stand at the doors. Clerks record the gift. The monk watches. The physician waits. Even gratitude is witnessed. Yet when the final prayer ends, the Queen remains bowed for several quiet breaths. After everyone expects her to rise, no one interrupts. For that brief interval, perhaps her thoughts belong only to her. Then the bells begin again. The household stirs, and hands reach forward to help her stand. You leave the shrine church beneath a darkening sky. Evening gathers over the pilgrim road, turning frozen fields blue and grey. Torches flare beside the gate, their light trembling across wet stone-wool cloaks, harness buckles, and the patient steam of horses. The Queen mounts with assistance from 2 attendants while guards form around her. The return journey is quieter. Pilgrims settle in barns and guest houses. Merchants cover their carts with oiled cloth. Smoke rises from village roofs, and small lamps appear behind horn windows. At a roadside shrine, one final candle burns beneath a wooden saint whose painted face has nearly vanished in the weather. The repaired cartwheel creaks behind you. It has carried blankets, candles, food, and gifts without breaking again, though the driver listens to every groan, as if expecting betrayal. The brown dog trots beside it, tired but unwilling to surrender its place in the royal procession. The Queen rides beneath her fur-lined cloak. The sprig of vervain given by the old woman remains tucked into her girdle. Whether it protects her from fever, bad dreams, or dishonest companions is impossible to know. The suspicious monk rides 3 horses behind her, which may already test the final promise. No one can quite agree whether the Queen's long silence means prayer exhaustion or relief at leaving the crowded shrine. Her ladies do not ask. They simply keep close enough to catch her if she sways. The castle appears after nightfall. Watchfires burn along its walls. Torchlight glows above the gate. The river below is a black ribbon beneath the mist, and the abbey bells answer the castle bells across the water. You pass through the raised portcullis over stones made slick by mud and frost, and into the inner ward where servants wait with lanterns. The Queen dismounts. A groom takes the reins. A lady checks whether her hands are cold. The physician asks whether the road has caused pain. The steward reports that the child has slept, fed, woken, cried, and slept again. The nurse waits inside with more details. The Queen has not crossed the courtyard before her health, her journey, her clothing, and her child become subjects of formal attention. The brown dog shakes mud onto the steward's boots. For once, no one interprets it politically. You follow the Queen through the familiar corridors. Wet cloaks steam near the fires. Pages hurry with messages. Guards bow beside oak doors. The rushes smell of mint and damp wool. From the writing room comes the scratch of a quill recording gifts offered at the shrine and expenses incurred along the road. The suspicious monk disappears down a side passage. The Queen notices. She says nothing. In her chamber, the cradle stands close to the hearth. The child sleeps beneath a wool covering one tiny hand, curled near the face. The nurse rises and bows. 2 ladies move aside so the Queen can approach. She bends over the cradle slowly. No herald announces the moment. No clerk writes it down. Still the room watches. The infant stirs. The Queen places one finger against the small palm, and the hand closes around it. Her face softens in the same way it did after the birth when the bells began carrying certainty beyond the walls. The nurse explains how much the child has eaten. The physician asks about sleep. A lady reports a brief cough. The Queen listens, then sits beside the cradle until the evening meal arrives. Even here she does not eat alone. A taster samples the bread broth and watered wine. The senior lady remains nearby. A servant tends the fire. Another waits, with a basin. The physician watches her appetite with the dedication of a falcon watching a field mouse. The queen finishes most of the broth. This will be considered encouraging. When the tray is removed, the long ritual of undressing begins. The circlet is lifted from her veil, the veil pins are counted, her cloak is brushed and folded. The girdle is removed along with its purse keys, prayer charm, and sprig of vervain. The senior lady places the herb beside the half-burned beeswax candle. The queen's gown is unlaced. Her hair is loosened. Warm water is carried behind the painted screen. The same hands that prepared her at dawn now prepare her for sleep. They wash away the road dust, smooth her linen shift, comb her hair, and inspect the skin of her hands for cold or swelling. The day closes as it opened through ceremony, touch observation, and quiet questions. The bed curtains wait. Fresh wood settles in the hearth. The warming pan passes between the sheets. A servant checks the shutters. A guard tests the bolts. The priest enters with a prayer, and the saint's doubtful relic is placed near the pillow once again. The queen kneels. You kneel with everyone else. The evening words are familiar. Protection through darkness. Peace within the household. Health for the mother. Safety for the child. Wisdom for the king. Mercy for those travelling through the winter night. When the prayer ends, the priest withdraws, but two ladies remain. The nurse sleeps beside the cradle. A guard waits in the outer room. Another stands in the corridor. The physician has left instructions to wake him. If the queen coughs, grows warm, grows cold, dreams badly, or seems too quiet. Royal medicine prefers a wide net. The queen enters the bed. The curtains close almost completely. A narrow opening remains just as it did before the birth, the fever and the pilgrimage. Through it attendants can hear her call. Through it candlelight reaches the bed. Through it the outside world keeps one patient eye upon her. Rank has given her soft linen, warm fur, rich food, guarded roads and chambers filled with costly objects. It has given her authority to answer widows, settle toll disputes, guide the king, protect servants, and send letters across the realm. It has not given her solitude. Her first waking breath belongs to attendants, her clothing belongs to ceremony, her appetite belongs to physicians, her marriage belongs to politics, her pregnancy belongs to the dynasty, her illness belongs to rumour, her prayers belong to witnesses. Even sleep remains surrounded by listening ears. Yet behind the heavy curtains the queen turns toward the wall and releases a long, quiet breath. The day's voices recede. The clerk's quill stops in the writing room. The last page carries the final message downstairs. The suspicious monk has vanished into whatever corner receives suspicious monks after dark. The dog circles near your pallet and settles upon the rushes. Outside, snow begins falling over the battlements, softening the roofs, the muddy road, the repaired cart, and the stones of the inner yard. The watchman calls the hour, but his voice comes gently through the wall, already blurred by wind. The candle beside the bed burns lower. Its flame leans, steadies, and becomes small. The queen lies within the quiet warmth of wool curtains while the child breathes softly beside the hearth. For once no messenger arrives, no petition waits at the door, no physician reaches for her wrist, no envoy studies her expression. The castle does not become empty, but it becomes still. Footsteps fade along distant passages, horses settle in straw, ash gathers beneath the fire. Across the dark river the abbey bell sounds once, then leaves the night unbroken. You draw the wool blanket around your shoulders. Cold stone remains beneath the rushes, but the fire gives one last gentle warmth. The air smells of beeswax lavender, old timber, and the faint, clean scent of snow entering through unseen cracks. There is nothing more you must carry tonight. The letters are sealed, the gates are barred, the candles are nearly gone. The Queen rests behind her curtains, watched still yet, for a little while untouched by demand. Her breathing slows, the child does not wake, even the dog has stopped dreaming. And now the castle drifts farther from you. The towers fade into mist. The watchfires dim behind falling snow. The corridors grow quiet one by one, until every iron key-oak door, folded veil, silver cup, and worn stone disappears into darkness. You no longer hear the court whispering. You no longer feel the winter road beneath your boots. There is only the low fire, the distant bell, and the softness of night settling over everything that has been busy guarded, counted, and observed. You may rest now. Nothing is expected of you. The old castle will keep its watch without your help, while snow covers the road and silence gathers beside the sleeping river. Let the final candle fade. Let the curtains close. Let the medieval world become warm, distant, and still. And yet the night does not close all at once. It settles gradually over the Queen's chamber layer after quiet layer as snow gathers upon the outer ledges and the old castle releases the last warmth of the day. You remain beneath your wool blanket beside the hearth, listening to the small sounds that survive after conversation has ended. A coal shifts in the ashes. The cradle creaks once. Wind touches the shutters with the faintest wooden sigh. Behind the bed curtains, the Queen turns upon the mattress, and one of the ladies sleeping nearby raises her head immediately. She listens for a call that does not come, then slowly lowers herself again. Even in dreams, attendants remain trained to notice every movement. The Queen's privacy is measured in breaths between such moments. Perhaps she lies awake, thinking of the shrine road beneath frost, of the old woman offering vervain, or of the child sleeping near the fire. Perhaps she remembers the southern letter and wonders whether the trusted officer has reached the flooded bridge. Perhaps she thinks of nothing at all and simply enjoys the rare comfort of not having to answer. No one can quite agree whether rulers sleep lightly because they carry kingdoms in their minds, or because their beds are surrounded by servants who cough, whisper, snore, and occasionally drop metal objects in the dark. Near the outer door, a guard shifts his spear from one hand to the other. His boots scrape softly against stone. He has stood through colder nights than this, watching corridors where almost nothing happens. Still, he must remain alert. A Queen's chamber is protected not only from enemies but from fire, sudden illness, unwanted visitors and servants who have misunderstood instructions with unusual confidence. Far below the gatehouse, watch changes. You hear the distant call pass from one tower to another. The words are indistinct, softened by stone and falling snow, yet their rhythm is reassuring. Someone remains awake on the walls, someone walks beneath the battlements carrying a horn lantern. Someone checks the chains of the drawbridge and glances toward the dark road disappearing beyond the gate. The world outside the chamber continues quietly. In the kitchens, a scullion covers the remaining embers, so they may be revived before dawn.
Coarse bread rests beneath cloths upon wooden boards. A pot of pottage waits to be reheated. Smoked fish hangs from rafters where the brown dog cannot reach it, although the dog would probably describe this arrangement as a failure of justice. In the stables, horses stand close together in their stalls. Their breath rises into the cold air. A groom sleeps upon damp hay, with his cloak pulled over his head. Beside a repaired cart, the removed tools have finally been gathered into a chest. The one iron peg remains lost somewhere beneath the straw.
At the abbey across the river, monks rise for another office in darkness. Sandaled feet cross cold flagstones. A lamp is carried through the cloister. An ink-stained scribe bends over an unfinished page before joining the prayers, leaving his quill beside a line that will wait patiently for morning. The bell begins. Its first note moves over the river through snow and mist and reaches the castle as a low, trembling sound. The second note follows, then another. You hear the queen breathe behind the curtains. The child stirs but does not cry. The nurse reaches into the cradle and places a careful hand upon the wool blanket. She does this without fully waking, guided by long practice. Her fingers remain there until the infant's breathing settles again. Nothing in the chamber is entirely still, yet nothing disturbs the calm. The half-burned candle shortens further. Melted wax runs down one side and gathers in a pale ridge near the holder. Earlier it illuminated the queen's circlet, the vervain sprig, the physician's worried face, and the silver cup beside the bed. Now its flame lights only a small circle of rushes and the edge of your blanket. The sprig of vervain lies where the senior lady placed it. Its leaves have dried and curled. By morning someone may return it to the queen's girdle. Someone else may burn it. A servant may keep a small piece as a charm. Some swear that herbs offered freely carry greater protection than herbs purchased at market, though merchants naturally disagree. You watch the flame and think of every chamber the queen has crossed since that first cold dawn. You remember the heavy curtains opening around her bed. You remember the ladies counting veil pins. You remember the taster chewing smoked fish while the room waited to see whether he survived breakfast. You remember the chapel relic that no one completely trusted, the merchant's blue cloth, the widow's damp petition, the sealed letter, and the sugar castle whose weakest tower somehow remained standing. You remember the royal bed prepared before witnesses, the birthing chamber searched beneath every curtain and chest, the fevered nights when physicians studied the moon while the midwife studied the patient, the garden path where frost shone over sleeping herbs, the shrine road stretching beneath a pale sky. Through all these moments the queen has rarely stood alone. Servants lift her garments, ladies arrange her hair, priests shape her prayers, physicians measure her body, clerks preserve her decisions, courtiers inspect her expressions, messengers carry fragments of her voice across the kingdom. Even those who love her become part of the circle that surrounds her. Yet, perhaps privacy does not vanish completely. Perhaps it simply becomes smaller and more carefully hidden. It may live in the instant before she answers a question. In the thought she chooses not to speak. In the genuine smile shared with the king over the dog and the unwanted fish. In the few breaths she remains bowed after prayer. In the way she touches the bark of the old pear tree. In the silence behind the bed curtains when everyone believes she is asleep. These moments leave no mark in the clerk's record. They carry no seal, no messenger delivers them, no courtier can confidently explain what they mean. They belong to her. The candle flame bends suddenly as a draught enters through the shutters. It becomes thin and blue near the wick, then rises again. You pull the blanket closer beneath your chin. The older attendant wakes and crosses the chamber in soft felt slippers. She checks the cradle first, then the fire, then the curtains around the queen's bed. She adds one small piece of wood to the embers. Sparks climb briefly and vanish beneath the rafters. She notices that you are awake. Without speaking, she points towards the remaining cushion near the wall. You place it beneath your head and settle deeper into the pallet. The dog shifts closer, resting its back against your feet. Its fur carries the faint smell of smoke, road mud, and several meals it was not officially given. Warmth moves slowly through your toes. The older attendant returns to her chair. Her iron keys rest in her lap. Soon the first bell before dawn will call the household back into motion. Water will be carried upstairs. Chests will open. Linen will be unfolded. The painted screen will be moved. Pages will gather with petitions, and the Queen's first waking expression will again be observed. But not yet. For now the keys remain still, the corridors remain empty. Snow covers the tracks in the courtyard until no one can tell which messenger arrived, which servant crossed the yard, or where the dog discovered its final bone. The castle grows softer beneath the night. Its hard towers lose their edges. Its windows become small pools of fading amber. Its walls, so full of footsteps and whispering voices, seem to sink peacefully into the hillside. You listen as the abbey bell gives its final, distant note. The sound fades across the river. The candle beside the Queen's bed flickers once, twice, and then quietly goes out. Darkness fills the chamber, gentle and complete. There is nothing left to watch, nothing left to interpret, nothing left to carry from room to room. The Queen rests. The child rests. The guards keep their patient places beyond the door. And you, warmed by wool embers and the sleeping dog at your feet, allow the long medieval night to close around you. Let your breathing grow slower. Let the cold stone fade beneath the rushes. Let the bells drift farther away until they become only a soft echo inside the darkness. The roads are empty now. The gates are closed. The letters have reached whatever distant hands await them. The candles at the roadside shrine have burned low. You may leave the castle to its quiet watchfires and its snow-covered roofs. You may rest without witnesses. You may sleep without ceremony. And as the final warmth of the hearth settles into ash, the Queen's hidden chamber, the silent cradle, and the old kingdom beyond the curtains dissolve gently into the peaceful dark. For a little while longer, you remain in that peaceful darkness, neither fully awake nor fully asleep, while the castle settles around you with the slow patience of ancient stone. The fire has almost vanished, but one coal still glows beneath the ash. Its light is too faint to illuminate the chamber, yet you sense it there, a small red heart hidden beneath grey dust. From time to time the coal gives a quiet crack, and a thread of warmth rises into the cold air. The dog at your feet breathes deeply. Its paws twitch once against the rushes, perhaps following some dream in which every market stall sells meat pies and no steward guards the kitchen door. Then it becomes still again, its weight warm through the edge of your blanket. Behind the closed curtains the queen sleeps. No attendant asks how deeply. No physician measures the rhythm of her breathing. No clerk records the hour at which she turns her head upon the pillow. For these few hidden moments, even those who keep watch have surrendered to weariness. The senior lady rests with her iron keys silent in her lap. The nurse sits beside the cradle, chin lowered to her chest. The guards beyond the door speak no words. Perhaps this is the closest the queen ever comes to true privacy, not through locked rooms or distant towers, but through the simple exhaustion of everyone around her. Snow continues falling beyond the shutters. It touches the chapel roof, the battlements, the stable yard, and the narrow wooden bridge crossing the ditch. It settles upon the cart whose wheel once broke in the mud. It gathers on the posts of the market stalls below the castle hill. It covers the footprints left by pilgrims returning from the shrine. By morning, the roads will seem new. The tracks of horses, messengers, merchants, and servants will disappear beneath one smooth white covering. No one looking from the tower will know which rider came from the south or which traveller carried a sealed letter beneath a damp cloak. For one night, the snow keeps its own counsel. You imagine it falling farther away, beyond the fields and villages over the forest road where branches arch above the path. The same snow settles upon roadside crosses, abandoned carts, frozen ponds, and the roofs of monastery guest-houses where travellers lie beneath coarse blankets. Inside one such guest-house, a pilgrim removes a lead badge from his cloak and places it beside a candle. A merchant counts coins beneath a wool cap. A tired mother warms a child's hands near a clay brazier. An old monk checks the latch and insists that the wind is caused by restless spirits, though the younger monk quietly stuffs straw into the crack beneath the door. Some swear that snow falling after midnight carries away troubling dreams. Others say it hides wandering spirits by covering the paths they follow. No one can quite agree whether either belief is true, but tonight the snow seems gentle enough to forgive both stories. The abbey bell remains silent. Soon it will call the monks from sleep, but the hour has not yet arrived. The river between abbey and castle moves beneath a thin edge of ice. Reeds bend beneath the weight of frost. Somewhere along the bank a fox places one careful paw before another and listens to the darkness. Nothing hurries. You do not hurry either. Your breathing follows the quiet rhythm of the chamber. In slowly with the faint smell of wool and lavender. Out gently while the last warmth from the hidden coal touches your face. The Queen's chamber is filled with objects that have served the long day and now rest without purpose. The silver cup waits on its stool. The painted screen stands folded near the wall. The carved bone case holds every veil pin counted and returned. The circlet lies inside its lined chest, no longer turning a tired woman into an image of royal authority. The letters remain sealed. The prayer book remains closed. The doubtful relic near the pillow performs its silent duty without asking to be believed. Even the iron keys do nothing. Doors stay shut without them. Chests keep their contents. The household sleeps without needing to know which key belongs to which lock. You begin to understand that the castle is most peaceful when its symbols are temporarily forgotten. A crown is only metal in darkness. A royal robe is only folded cloth. A great bed is only a warm place in which two people may rest. The queen herself, hidden beyond the curtains, no longer appears as the centre of ceremonies, alliances, bloodlines, and expectations. She is simply a sleeping figure beneath wool blankets, weary after a journey, with one hand perhaps resting near the pillow. The child makes a tiny sound. The nurse wakes at once, but the sound fades before she moves. She listens for several breaths, then settles again. The infant's small chest rises and falls beneath the blanket. One day that child may be surrounded by tutors, guards, priests, clerks, and nobles. Every word may be remembered. Every friendship may be examined. Every illness may trouble the kingdom. But tonight the child knows none of this. There is only warmth, there is only sleep, there is only the soft nearness of familiar voices and the quiet crackle of the dying hearth. You let the thought drift away. The corridor outside seems farther now. The stairs descend into darkness. The great hall stands empty beneath smoke-blackened rafters. Tables have been cleared, cups gathered, trenchers carried away. A few crumbs remain among the rushes where mice move carefully beneath the benches. The sugar castle is gone. The musicians have packed their harp and flute. The chamberlain's wife has finally stopped interpreting everyone's expressions. Even the suspicious monk must sleep somewhere, though no one can quite imagine him doing so without listening through a wall. Farther below, the kitchen fire waits beneath a covering of ash. Before dawn, a servant will uncover it and breathe upon the coals. Sparks will appear. Water will begin warming. Pottage will return to the pot. Bread will be cut. The castle's life will begin again with smoke bells, cold hands, and hurried footsteps. The queen's curtains will open. Ladies will ask about her sleep. The physician will look for signs of health. A page will arrive with messages. The private darkness will retreat. But that morning remains far away. You need not follow it yet. You remain in the still hour before duty returns, when everyone from queen to scullion is held beneath the same dark roof and the same quiet snow. The walls no longer feel severe. Their cold stones seem protective now, thick enough to keep the winter wind outside. The tapestries hang without movement. The rushes beneath you smell faintly of mint. Your blanket grows heavier around your shoulders, though perhaps you are simply sinking deeper into rest. The dog gives one contented sigh. The coal beneath the ashes dims. Outside, a final snowflake touches the window ledge and becomes part of the whiteness already there. You allow your eyes to close. The queen's chamber fades. The cradle, the curtains, the keys, and the low hearth drift beyond sight. The river mist rises gently over the abbey fields. The forest road disappears beneath snow. The last watchfire on the distant wall becomes a single, soft point of light, then smaller, then gone. Nothing follows you. No court waits. No bell commands you to rise. No one watches your expression or asks what your silence means. You carry no letter, no petition, no crown, and no duty through the darkness. You simply rest warm beneath wool while the ancient castle keeps its quiet vigil far away. And in the deepest part of the night, where even stories grow still, every whisper fades until only peaceful silence remains. Still somewhere beneath that peaceful silence, the castle keeps one final rhythm. It is not the rhythm of bells, footsteps, or whispered instructions. It is slower than all of these. It is the deep, almost hidden rhythm of stone releasing the warmth it has gathered from the hearth of snow, settling upon the roof of timber beams, shrinking softly in the cold. You rest inside that rhythm. Your blanket lies heavily across your shoulders. The rushes beneath your pallet press against the wool, and the sleeping dog remains curled near your feet, warm and solid, and entirely unconcerned with royal succession. Beyond the shutters, the night sky has cleared. Snow clouds drift away from the moon, leaving a pale light over the battlements. It shines upon the chapel tower, the stable roofs, and the narrow path leading from the keep toward the outer gate. No one walks there now. The guards have retreated beneath the gatehouse arch, where a brazier glows beside their boots. One guard warms his hands, the other leans against the stone and tells a story in a low voice. He speaks of a white deer seen in the northern forest, an animal said to appear only before great changes in the kingdom. Some swear that a hunter followed it for 3 days and emerged beside a monastery hundreds of miles away. Others say the deer belonged to a local lord and escaped through a damaged fence. No one can quite agree which version is more useful, so both survive. The guards' voices do not reach the Queen's chamber. Only the faint glow from their fire touches the lower wall. Inside, the older attendant stirs in her chair. The keys in her lap shift with a soft, metallic sound. She wakes just enough to look toward the bed curtains, then toward the cradle. Everything remains calm. She closes her eyes again. Her life has been spent near doors. She knows which noblewoman arrives too early, which priest remains too late, which servant steals candles, and which messenger drinks before delivering news. She knows how the Queen takes her morning ale, how she prefers her cloak fastened, and which pillow eases the ache in her neck after long ceremonies. She knows more of the Queen's daily life than almost anyone. Yet even she does not know every thought behind those curtains. That small unknown space remains. It is no larger than the silence between two breaths, but it belongs entirely to the Queen. You imagine her dreaming. Perhaps she walks through the winter garden alone, with no attendants carrying cushions and no physician counting her steps. The frost has gone. Lavender grows along the wall. The old pear tree is heavy with fruit spared from Threat's charms and red wool ribbons. In the dream, no guard waits at the gate. No clerk records where she walks. No lady examines the hem of her gown. The Queen follows a path beyond the garden wall and finds herself upon a green hillside under a warm sky. She wears no circlet. Her hair is uncovered. The fur-lined cloak has become a simple wool mantle, light enough that she can move freely. Perhaps the brown dog follows her there. It probably does. Even royal dreams must make room for determined animals. The Queen walks toward a river that carries no sealed letters and reflects no watchtowers. She sits beside the water and removes her shoes. Her feet touch the grass. There are no witnesses to describe whether she smiles. The dream belongs to no chronicler. It is written nowhere. It will not survive in a monastery library beneath dust and candle soot. No scholar will argue over its meaning. No courtier will claim it reveals a secret alliance. By morning even the Queen may forget it. Yet for this hour it gives her a private kingdom without walls. The chamber grows colder as the hidden coal fades. You feel the change near your face, though the blanket keeps most of the chill away. Somewhere within the mattress feathers settle beneath the Queen's weight. The cradle gives a faint wooden creak. The child wakes, not fully. A tiny hand moves above the blanket. The mouth opens in a small, uncertain sound. Before the nurse rises, the queen speaks from behind the curtains. Her voice is soft. The nurse carries the child to the bedside. The curtain opens only a little. The bundle disappears inside. For several moments no one else moves. The nurse waits near the bed. The senior lady remains asleep. The dog lifts its head, listens, and places its muzzle back upon its paws. You hear the queen murmuring. The words are too quiet to understand. Perhaps she is soothing the child. Perhaps she sings part of an old hymn learned in childhood. Noble children hear lullabies from nurses, mothers, servants, and chapel singers. Some songs promise angels at the bed, others warn wandering spirits to remain beyond the door. A few contain verses so old that no one remembers what half the words mean. The tune drifting through the curtain is simple. It rises, falls, and repeats. There is no audience for it, even though you hear. You do not interpret the melody. You do not carry it into the corridor. You simply let it move through the darkness. The child settles. The nurse receives the bundle again and returns it to the cradle. She tucks the wool covering around the small body and sits beside it until the breathing becomes slow. Behind the curtains, the queen becomes still. The castle returns to silence, yet the lullaby seems to remain in the room softer than candle smoke resting among the rafters where the last warmth of the fire has gathered. You listen until you can no longer remember where the tune began. The night stretches around you. Far beyond the castle walls, the pilgrim road lies empty beneath moonlight. The shrine where the queen offered candles stands closed, its relic locked behind silver and glass. The old woman who gave her vervain sleeps beside a village hearth, unaware that a dried sprig from her hand now rests near a royal bed. The southern officer rides beneath the same moon, perhaps following the flooded road toward the damaged bridge. His horse moves carefully over frozen mud. A sealed message lies beneath his cloak. He does not know that the queen who sent him has just sung to her child in the dark. The widow with the disputed field sleeps in a roadside inn waiting for the clerk's decision. The merchants guard their blue cloth from damp. The gardener dreams of pear blossoms. The suspicious monk may be awake, after all, writing notes by a candle he has almost certainly borrowed without permission. All these lives remain connected to the castle. Petitions, tolls, prayers, meals, births, journeys, and rumours form threads running outward from the queen's chamber across fields, towns, abbeys, and roads, but the threads loosen during sleep. For a few hours the kingdom asks nothing. You breathe in slowly. The air is cold but clean. You breathe out and feel your body settle more deeply into the palate. The stone walls fade again. The snowy courtyard grows distant. The guards, the monk, the messenger, and the merchants drift away like figures painted upon an old tapestry, seen by failing candlelight. Only the lullaby remains. It becomes quieter. It becomes slower. It becomes the sound of wind moving gently beyond the shutters, the sound of the river beneath thin ice, the sound of snow sliding softly from the chapel roof. Your thoughts no longer need to follow the queen through corridors. You do not need to count her attendants. You do not need to watch the curtains open. Morning will come when it comes. The bells will ring without you. The servants will carry water. The fires will be stirred. The court will begin its patient watching once more. But you remain beyond all duty. You rest where no one asks your name, your rank, your purpose, or the meaning of your silence. And while the medieval world sleeps beneath the moon, you let the final traces of torchlight disappear, leaving only warmth, darkness, and the gentle certainty that nothing more is required tonight. End of script. Sweet dreams.